Good evening, and thank you for joining us at our work session tonight on November 12th, 2024. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Jay, can you lead us off?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
and if you could all remain standing for a moment of silence. Today I'd like that moment of silence to be in honor of Sergeant Andrew Patrick Smith, Diana's second cousin, who tragically passed away this past week. And may God hold him and Diana and her family tight. Thank you. Before we get going with discussion, I know we have at least one veteran in the room, so I want to say Happy Veterans Day and thank all of our veterans. A day late, but we had a nice ceremony yesterday with a Iwo Jima survivor as our veteran speaker, and we could never truly thank our veterans enough. Every day to me is Veterans Day, and we appreciate all you've done for our country. Thank you. All right, so we'll open the session. I'd like to have a discussion on the use of a $100,000 grant from Pete Harcum's office, a CREST grant. We've had some discussion on this already. There has been there have been some conversations with department heads. There were just from a point of view, there are different types of grants available out there for different things, and the CREST grants are sort of like an open door grant where they could be worked on with different things. We had a conversation about electronic boards for both the Capellini Center and the library. The library has been working towards trying to get an electronic board for a while to be able to advertise the programs and be able to communicate with our public on different things that are happening. And with the move of the Parks and Recreation offices into the Capellini Center and all of the events that go on there, there's been a lot of discussion about trying to get that information out there a little more as well. The library, we have the museum there, we have the theater, we have different programming, and we have the center. There was another idea about using it for a heating and cooling system adjustment at the courthouse, but that, to me, I've always felt that is more of a capital project and part of our maintenance that needs to be upkept. So I'll open for discussion. I know, Susan, you wanted to?
Yeah, I have another suggestion, and I think the bottom line issue, it reminds me I always have to speak at the right distance, he says. So I hope this is okay, Tom. I think we have to look at needs versus wants, okay? And I think we have a need, and we haven't done anything about it for, I think, about 4 years. The Sparkle Lake Dam is classified as a high hazard dam. If anything were to happen to that dam, it would go downhill onto Granite Springs Road, the houses going down Broad Street. That's where I think it would go. I don't know if it would hit Hyatt Street. I think the town knows, and I've heard Jim talk about this several times. Every 10 years, we are required to have it inspected, okay? And it's not just, a $100 inspection fee. We need an engineering firm to do this. The last one was done in 2011. We're already 4 years behind schedule, and DEC is going to get on our backs, and if we don't do that, then we can be fined. I know doing an engineering study for Sparkle Lake Dam is not very glamorous. Certainly it lacks the glamour that the digital signs have, but this is a need, and if we don't do that, if we don't use this nice $100,000 gift, we might have to take it at a fund balance. I know there's a possibility of getting grants, but you can't just say, well, let's look at a possible grant. that just kicks it down the road, and without knowing which grant, what the criteria for the grant would be, whether we really have a chance for the grant, I think that's short-sighted. This is something that needs to be done. The digital signs are a nice thing. I even question the need because, frankly, there aren't that many pedestrians that walk past the library, all right?
Oh, there are plenty. It's
Well, I
a
don't,
very active site.
What about the cars?
okay.
thousands of
Well, you
cars.
can't read the signs when you go by the cars, not unless you want to have the car stop. How many people can read all the words on the
No, look,
on the triangles?
There's traffic too.
Center.
But regardless,
So-
I do think that we should look into this.
But I think
How much is inspection?
I think 70,000 to 100,000. I think Jim has to, I think he's gotten a quote from Weston and Sampson, who has done work in the past. And I think this is a critical need. We have a dam that DEC considers high hazard. We're 4 years behind schedule. We're subject to possible fines if we don't do this.
But
We're ju-
regardless, I hear what the concerns around that, so we should just do a little bit of a deep dive to study that, for
So-
sure.
I
Well,
think
just
we
let
have
me-
to do this before we decide on something
Well,
nice.
well,
with
let me
digital
tell you where
signs.
we are, Susan. I have spoken to Jim about it in the past. We spoke with Jay Grasso,
Yes.
our grant writer, and we've spoken with Assemblyman Slater regarding some of the waterway grants, which would cover this.
Which specifically? I'd like to know specifically
I
which
will
grants.
I will pull the email up tomorrow morning and forward it to you. But Matt was setting up a Zoom meeting with us, with Jay Grasso, myself, and Jim, to discuss this, to see what the options are, where we could go. But you know, we've also had the discussion that if we need to, we can go out of fund balance and out of the budget to try to get this done if we can't get the grant. But since there are specific inland waterway grants, this is a very, very good project that would have a high success ratio, according to Jay.
The little I know, I remember from the inland waterway grants, which the town explored several years ago. You realize I've kind of been around for a while, so I'm
Couple of years, yes.
a couple of years, so I'm sort of familiar with that. I think that the inland waterway grant would be to improve water quality. It would be for economic development tied in with an inland waterway, and I don't think doing a mandated inspection report would qualify and score very high on a grant application. So I think we have to be realistic.
Well, we will have the conversation with the state on it and at least explore that.
But if it's high hazard, right? What do we need an inspection for if we already know it's a high hazard?
No,
No,
it,
no,
it-
to make
they
sure- to
have
make
to.
sure it
Hold
won't
on, I
fail.
was speaking. Please do not
Yeah.
cut me off. I was very respectful when you were
Okay.
speaking. and
Sorry,
really
I
would appreciate
apologize.
it. No,
All right.
thank you. So, I mean, if it's that critical, right, why don't we jump into, looking into a repair as opposed to, spending $70,000 on an inspection, which apparently we're going to know what the outcome of the inspection is. It's
Yeah.
going to be a bad outcome.
No, we don't know that there are any problems.
You just said it was high hazard.
No. It's
No.
it's qualified as that. It's listed in the
That's why it's
DEC
mandated for it.
database as high hazard, which is why they mandate an inspection report every 10 years. It's the inspection report which will tell us if anything has to be done. I'm not saying it's dangerous now.
I see. You're saying the location is high hazard.
Yeah, it's
they-
deemed high, it's hazard.
It's deemed high hazard by the DEC.
The location, not the bridge, it's not the dam itself.
The dam is considered a high hazard, okay? You could probably go on, maybe Jim has that documentation from the DEC. They have classified that. I'm saying if the dam broke, hopefully never, but if it broke, my assumption from the topography is it would go south. It would go south. There are houses on Granite Springs Road, new houses on Broad Street. There are even more houses in the pathway now than there were in 2011, because I used to live in that neighborhood, so I know what has been built there. The DEC mandates this.
So
You can call it
Hold
an
on, but
unfunded
Susan,
mandate.
I just reviewed with Diana, there was a bid done with the highway that was covering waterways, culverts, mandated deemed areas that needed inspections. And there was a bid for that that covered those expenses.
It covers design repairs for flag structures and things like that.
So
I think
we should also-
ask if they'll cover the engineering.
We could also
services
explore it that way as well.
So this is a bid that the highway,
The highway department passed a bid to
Was it 2 years ago?
it's a 2-year bid, but it was for bridges and culverts and flag structures for the town, so that we have the engineering services will go in and do all the paperwork, all the documents for bids and whatnot.
Like we have an engineering service that does just this for culverts.
well,
dams.
if it's bridges and culverts, I don't know if this would,
But we can
that's a
ask.
possibility.
For flag
So what I would
structures, so.
suggest
What?
is that we
Flag
defer any action on the Crest grant until we answer these questions. We're not under any deadline to.
So my feeling is, once again, if we end up needing to do it, we do have the money to do it. I do not want to keep holding town money as a piggy bank over and above what is required by New York State. We should not be holding the residents' money hostage. As my mother-in-law used to always tell me, "What are you going to do? Use my money after I'm dead?" We need to be able to balance and to utilize, and keep a clear mind and approach on this. There's a good feeling that we're there. I didn't know about that. Thank you for.
Yeah,
We're talking
and
about
thank
that,
you for
ladies.
bringing that up. I do see the need in that and keeping it relevant because during COVID and stuff, and obviously the ball got dropped from the 10-year.
Well, then, Ed, if you're comfortable with using fund balance, and I certainly would be, then I would welcome a resolution to transfer whatever the money is required. We would ask Jim to get a
Yeah,
more
let's
definitive
go with
quote,
Jim.
Let
and
me-
then be committed that we would use the fund balance we have, 24 million roughly.
Can we not, no pun intended, cross that bridge as we get there?
Yes, and let's look into
But
this.
not defer it for another year.
No,
Susan,
no.
I've been talking to Jim about this for a couple of months, and I'd like it completed and done. As Susan was trying to explain, if the dam fails, then it's
It
a
may
high.
not
Then
fail.
I know.
It may
Then
be
it's a high
wonderful, but it
hazard.
needs an inspection.
That's why you get inspected. New York State could tell us all about that because DOT is probably 2 decades behind on bridge inspections. If they wanted to come after us on 2 to 3 years, that would be an issue, in my eyes, because I'd like to know where the $3 million bid has gone, or the $3 million grant for the study that DOT got.
This
for
is
Route 6.
DEC.
No, I know, I understand, but my point is, they all kick that can. I've already said it up here many times. I don't like to kick cans down the road. I will keep working towards getting that done, but I want to explore the grant opportunities first, because it saves our taxpayer the dollars and really takes some of our state dollars back. So that's been my philosophy since I unfortunately had to take over at the table for Tommy, and it'll keep being there. And Tommy and I had many discussions about how can we utilize our elected officials better to bring money into our town, to bring money back to our town, because we're the ones paying it out. We're the ones putting it in those coffers. And similar to too heavy of a fund balance, New York State should not be holding on to our money. The federal government should not be holding on to our money and not utilizing it for things they're supposed to be utilized for.
I
So-
totally agree with going after all the possible grants that we can get. And by the way, I think I sent you all an email this afternoon. I just found out, I was just looking up something else, that the town did not get the grant for the Halleck's Mill sewer.
The second part,
the
we got the
we-
1.25
got-
million, but
Well, yes, so we don't have any money, so at some point, we're going to have to discuss what happens to the Halleck's Mill Sewer Extension Project, because it didn't get the grant. So
I
it's
have-
The
not as
second part of
simple.
the grant.
I've already asked to be put on to a agenda meeting with re-elected Congressman Lawler to try to see what we could do for the 2025 year, and hopefully,
Well, you've got $1 million from him and $1 million from previous Mondaire Jones, and that doesn't go very far in a $40 million project.
Not at
right?
all.
So it's sort of like, and I wonder how long even Mondaire Jones's money is going to get held, in terms
Where
of
it's
an
going.
appropriation, because it's not going to be used. So I think it's not just a question with Congressman Lawler. It goes well beyond that. But that's
Right.
just the problem with going back to the press grant, which is the topic. So I would prefer to just do, I think, do some more, wait until your Zoom meeting to see what happens and what the grant possibilities are, and then revisit the discussion, because we just got notified about this CREST grant about 1 or 2 months ago, so there's no urgency to do it, and there's certainly no urgency on the digital signs.
Well, I also don't want the money to dissipate out of our being able to use it. And when I say that, I even mean just having the money to do the projects through fund balance until it's reimbursed. So, not that we have really a problem with it, but that's how I like to think in short term of getting something finished, so long term we don't end up with trying to figure it out down the road.
Yeah, we got to start finishing things.
Yes, absolutely.
I have a suggestion that is along the lines of like the digital sign, but we have a beautiful Yorktown stage. Has anyone considered the marquee? Because that marquee it looks like the RKO from Fordham Road.
Yep.
That was in movies. So I mean,
It
that
could
would
use
be,
a little facelift.
That would be something that would also be beneficial to
It
the
def-
stage and to the nightlife, the culture. Bringing the culture back into Yorktown.
No, absolutely. And we just thankfully put what did we put in there? $1 million for the interior. We just did new doors for the outside.
Yeah, the marquee. It's time for the marquee.
Well, yes, but I would like to spread the wealth
Spread
a
it
little
around.
bit.
Gotcha.
Well, that's an interesting suggestion, because I don't think there's been a full discussion about all the possibilities. Okay, somehow the digital signs just cropped up, and they were talked about, some of it, I think, even before we even got this grant. So I think we need more discussion. We need a list.
I agree. I think the digital signs, for me personally, the reason why I think they took shape was there's been this need for transparency and information. And like, even if the elevator was down at the Cappellini building, just like letting people know so they didn't go all the way in and then couldn't get up the stairs. So there were things, I feel like, that one, this board wants to bring forth, and B, we want to support the town and have it. And I just thought that was a way to really try to update and engage the information that we give the town. Like, I would have even loved to do the one in the chamber. Like, I don't think it's kind of, the pixels get a little wishy-washy.
They own that, so we can't.
I know, but I'm saying, like, but I do see the need for all the things that are happening in town. But for me, more information, like museum is closed, like due to whatever, elevator is not working, or like, great celebrities coming to town. Like, I don't know. I just feel like it's all about information. But I think that's why it took shape, that it could be great, because I do know that there's so many people starving for walkability in this town. And with these projects that are going on right here in the center of town, and then the library dealing with what's on that side, I felt like it was good enough, or spaced out enough to share information.
Do you know how many activities go on at the library? There is so much stuff that
The
goes on in
bulletin
that
board
library.
is full.
Yeah.
I look at it every time I'm in the library, and
Yeah,
there's
but-
no way
but-
that's going to
but-
get on a digital sign.
No,
But on a scrolling thing, people drive by it, and yes, they pick
And
it up.
if-
Yes.
And if you
You're
craft
driving.
Yeah,
if you craft the image that you put up, because it's like almost like a PowerPoint presentation. That's what's legal according to the DOT. So it has to be. It can't be like anything moving, but it can be something that flips like a PowerPoint presentation. And if you decide that you're not going to put a million things, and I was the one that had a big part with the chamber sign when I was president of the chamber, and I would tell people when they would want to advertise, I'm like, listen, you sent me a paragraph and a half. It's not going to work, right? So less is more, because that makes the words bigger,
Yeah.
right? And so there is a way to make it so you can drive by and read it, and it flips at 7
100%.
seconds. I forget what the DOT max is that in order to be compliant. So I mean, I don't think having the digital signs is a bad idea by no means. I think something like that, something that enhances the community, something that gets the information out. Like I said, that's why I brought up the marquee. The marquee could be used also for purposes like that, because the marquee would be digital, right? It wouldn't be like, you're not going to have a guy with a ladder with the little white letters that goes up, and, one at a time, and then gets down.
why
And
not?
goes over. Yeah, or with the big stick, So anyway, and I think using the Crest Grant money for the beautification of the town is a great idea, and I would support that.
All right, well, we still have some exploring to do, but I wanted to have the conversation, and I know you actually, I think you were still thinking of trying to do a fundraiser with the
Yeah,
was the
I wanted
stage.
to do something called Marquee Makeover Night, but I think we looked at it, and the marquee, a really nice one, would be about 40K. That was a year, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. So I mean, I could go back with Barry from the stage and see if we could put together like some comedy nights just to raise some money for it.
Yeah.
You know, and do something, you know, nice for the town and the restaurants. When people come there, they take in a comedy night and eat at our restaurants. Not a bad idea.
All right. Well, thank you for the ideas. Vape moratorium. So I'd like to have a discussion so we get forth after there's going to be an expiration, want to get a new law. I would like some ideas, but I would like to put out my thought process. And Mr. Rodriguez, if you could let me know the general feeling on this. I'd like to eliminate from our code having any shop that sells primarily vape and vape products, which would similar to like a bar is considered a bar if it's 51% alcohol sales. If it's 49% alcohol sales, it's considered a restaurant if they're selling food too. Adam, is it possible to delineate that? And I know that Luciana and Sergio had some ideas about distances from schools, religious institutions, and things like that.
Not only that, distances from
Other
each
vape shops.
other vape shops. So this
Yeah,
way,
like a duration.
you don't get into the situation that we had on Commerce Street where another vape shop opened up across the street from the vape shop that's been there for a while. So you wouldn't have two vape shops, facing each other or side by side, and you don't have this proliferation.
Yeah, there should be like a
of these
5,
things.
10, 15-mile
But-
radius or
But
whatever it is.
I do like your idea of treating it in the same fashion that like a restaurant and is categorized.
How do you enforce that, Ed?
That's a good question.
Well,
You know?
I've done some research and I've looked at other vape laws. My first question to you is, you talked about vape, but the moratorium is smoke and vape. So I think that's one issue, okay? The other issues I've seen is, yes, several of them do a percentage of sales, 5%, 2%, 10%. Some specifically exempt supermarkets, convenience stores.
Yep.
That's another option, okay? Some of them will have the distance locations, so that's something. Another issue is some of them require special permits. Do we want to go a special permit route? Okay, and then if you go a special permit route, what's the duration of the permit? 2 years, 3 years, because there's always a cost and the procedural things. So those are some, and then you need something to allow the non-conforming, the existing shops. And I think we have a cigar shop, already here. So those are some of the issues. So I think we need to decide what we want to do. If it's smoke and vape, and also the paraphernalia.
That's
So
really mine.
I think that's the major thing.
Yeah.
So when this all first started, I believe I came out and said that I don't have a problem with a cigar shop.
Yeah.
Your cigar shops are not selling head shop paraphernalia. They're not selling vape. And also one of the things I'd also like to see is a one and done clause on if there's a violation and they're caught selling illegal products like marijuana now they could sell it, but you need a special license. And if they don't have that, they're done.
They don't reopen.
The door's closed. And just like, and I believe it also might fall under special permit already, because that's how we closed that other vape shop.
Is that like a no forgiveness clause, Adam?
I'm sorry?
Is it like a no forgiveness clause?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Like, in other words, like once they get violated that they're selling marijuana or they have some level of paraphernalia, like they're not able to reopen? Or is it just the landlord that once they meet their violations, the landlord just doesn't allow them to open?
It depends on the, specific case. I mean, the landlord could take you to court for violating the lease and evict you. If you get violated by the building department and a CO is pulled, then you can't operate at all.
Right.
So,
in the event that we wanted to put in the smoke and vape moratorium that once you violate it, the certificate of occupancy would be pulled.
Yeah, I mean, you could write that into the law also, that if,
I'm just asking.
yeah, no, I didn't understand, that's what you're, so yeah,
Yeah.
you could write it into the law so that if there's any violations, it's,
So-
you know, your CO is pulled, and that's it, you have to shut down.
So what I'd like to see as part of the law would be, some kind of a distance kind of thing. Also, to Susan's point, I don't want to walk into a place and it looks like a bong shop. I'm going to be straight up and blunt with it. Blunt. There's another another pun.
Yes.
But anyway, I think I'd like to see something like that as well. I think the no forgiveness clause or whatever you want to call it, I think that's another great idea that should be in there. That should be baked into that.
What about radiuses away from schools,
and I
George?
think what's that?
So, like schools and children activities?
Absolutely, absolutely, and also, we have to delineate exactly what we're talking about. Because I don't really have a problem with a cigar shop. Cigar shops are usually, they're benign. People go there. It's more they sit around, they have a cigar, and they watch, I don't know, whatever, a game on TV or some kind of a sporting event. I'm not really talking about that kind of a thing. I'm talking more about these vape shops that pop up and and they just they seem to gravitate toward illegal things for some reason. Not all of them, but many of them, I think.
Most of them bring bad elements.
And
to the town.
and it's a bad element. I don't think we want that in Yorktown.
Well,
So I think those are some of the points that I would like to see in the law, along with whatever you guys suggest.
here, this is the, what town is this? I can't remember where it's from. But it has definitions for smoke shops, tobacco products, and smoking paraphernalia. I don't think there's any question about I'm not even sure what paraphernalia means, because if you're selling pipes, that's
Yeah.
But what's vaping? Is vaping a tobacco product? I don't know.
No, vape
Could
is
be
like
both.
Well, in this particular law, tobacco products has all kinds of things. Tobacco products, including but not limited cigarettes, chewing tobacco, vape pens, vapors,
Yeah.
e-liquids, e-vaporizers. So I think are there stores that sell just vapes? I don't know. This is not my field. So
there
The
are
new stores come out, and primarily they have the vaping, and that's all
they're just vaping.
the
So,
vape
well-
pens, the cartridges, and then-
charger.
well, let me actually just back up a little bit, Susan. One of the biggest issues, and where this really became very obvious, the illegal drug trade of the selling marijuana, but what they are also doing is to try to avoid, and that's why we need to be fairly tight on the language and lead this discussion, is that like the one that got closed down next to Starbucks, when you walked in there, on the sides they had all of their vape products, they had all of their head shop paraphernalia, the bongs and the things for smoking marijuana, and in the middle they had tables of candy to say, oh no, but we're not a vape shop.
We're a convenience store.
We're like a convenience store. We're a candy shop. We have other things, and that's why that percentage of sale is very important. We can define out the vaporized product, so that it is a tobacco product, but it's vaporized, so it's almost like a vaporized nicotine.
Nobody wants to wash their hair after smoking a good cigarette.
But
That's the problem. So they want
honestly,
this
Ed,
banana-smelling thing.
Ed, I like the whole idea of breaking it out, but the enforcement on that is going to be so hard. Who's going to go in there and say, give me your sales, what was candy and what was tobacco?
Well, let's get. Can I just say
it's
something?
so
But
hard
Pat,
to
can I just
do
say something?
that.
We don't have that many, and we have too many, right? It's like one of those things for me.
yeah.
So one of the ones that got closed out here was the one that was by the dance studio in the center of town, and then there was one across the street in a different location. But now there's only one in that area. Then there's also one on Route 6. The one on Route 6, on your way down to the shopping center, I get a lot of teen complaints. Like mothers that will actually call me and say, "Can you go by there? Because there's kids hanging out in front of it and whatnot." So I just think that if kids are going to find their way to hang out in all various places. But if we can limit the amount of the radius that they're near each other, and Cortland, which actually does allow dispensaries for marijuana, has specific rules to how far away from a school, a daycare, or a child facility it needs to be. And that's how they've done their vape shops, their shops, and also their dispensaries. So if we can just come up with a way to minimize it, and then also if we can put in this thing that where if you do anything illegal and you get caught once, that the certificate of occupancy goes away, then that can maybe help us as well as far as enforcing it.
How about we just say no?
Well, I think
You could do that too.
the distance issue is a simple issue, and I can give you four municipalities, 4 towns, it's 3 towns, 1 village in Yorktown where you can get the copy of the law right off
Yeah.
the internet. That's a simple one. I think it sounds like we're not going after smoke shops. If we're
Correct.
okay, so the moratorium is smoke and vape. So
Well, what do you mean by a smoke shop? Like
the
a
cigar shop.
Okay.
Okay, so it seems to me that we're agreed paraphernalia and vaping, right? So we have to the lawyers have to craft a definition that's very clearly on paraphernalia and smoke.
And also,
and vape.
yeah, because the truth is, we do not have dispensaries here in town. So if someone's bringing in,
We opted out
yes, we
on the
did.
marijuana.
But what happens
Yes,
is
we
the easy pens, those like Juuls and the whatever, they can be either tobacco or they could be marijuana.
They could be CBD.
So people could be,
products.
or there's also the CBD, which is not without the THC. I don't know.
Jay, can you text me that?
It's a whole thing. So I just
Text
feel like
me
we
that
got to get
page.
clean on like what we're allowing, what we're not allowing.
The definition is the key thing. The penalty, you're one violation, you're out. The distance
all
is
fine.
out. The age is out. The signage is out. Those are simple things to. Okay, it's deciding what we're going to do, and then if it becomes a percentage, then you have a percentage, so you're eliminated if there's candy or if they're normal cigarettes.
Yeah, like 2 magazines and a lollipop doesn't mean that it's
Yeah.
going to be
So and again, just by the 4 laws that I looked at, even the percentages vary.
Yeah, of course.
So I think we have to
Tighten that belt a little bit.
before Adam, starts drafting something. He needs the parameters from us, and
Which
I
is
think
why
we're
we're here today.
kind of getting there.
Yeah, that's what we're getting at. And also, I think, Adam, if there's any legal description of smoke, vape, paraphernalia,
Oh, I can give him this one from.
no, I'm saying we'll just plug it in so that there's no.
We also have we have some from New York City, courtesy of Jay. Thank
Yeah.
you, Jay.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah,
New York State. I'm sorry. Yes, New York State.
yeah. I mean, if
Because
others
the
have
city
already,
has one in every corner 4 times deep.
if others have already done this, it just takes a little bit more research
Sure.
to come up with. No definition's going to be perfect. There'll probably always be loopholes. Look, we went through the ATV definition issue, and that was the most critical part of the ATV law.
Right. Well,
So-
look, the biggest problem with any law is you can't legislate the behavior of the person
Yeah.
breaking the law.
Yeah.
You could put in legislation. You need the enforcement part of it, and that's where our police department comes in, our building department, and we need to make sure that where we can be extremely tough is in the penalty phase and what's written into the law. So I think at this point, Adam, you see where we're looking to go. Maybe Susan could share some of her laws. I know you have the New York State page from.
Well, from the database
Right.
of New York State laws.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just
So-
told you that most of them, they're,
Yep.
the one that has the 3 definitions is the town of Chile. There's the town of Mendon, the town of Gates, the town of Ogden, and the village of, Minoa. But this is all on the database. And I just did it from, I think, 2022, because I thought that was more reasonable. I don't think they started doing vape laws. Most of the laws were moratoriums, and everyone else is dealing with this. So if we start it, I guarantee you they'll start copying ours.
Yep.
No, I think we're right on point with
Yeah.
this. So, all right.
Very good. Thank you. Yep. Mr. Tegeter, you want to come up? We're gonna to the mic there. We're gonna talk a little bit about the solar moratorium. So, we had a draft that there were some questions on, both from the public and from members of the board. So I'm first going to ask Adam to go over some of the major changes that were talked about prior to the meeting with the setbacks and screening, and then we'll get a couple of comments from the board, and then head over to Mr. Tegater.
Give me a second. I'm
Sure.
stuck here.
Sure.
Can't log in.
Can't find the any key.
While you're doing that, can I just make an announcement?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're going to have Diana do a song and dance right now to entertain you all.
I just want to announce to our residents that I issued a film permit to the production company Carrier LLC, who will be filming an episode of the Netflix series The Diplomat in southern Yorktown. The filming will take place in the area of Sundial Farm. We don't want anybody to be alarmed, but you will hear signs of gunfire. You may see actors carrying some firearms in the area, wearing black. We will have the New York State Police, the Yorktown Police, and the Yorktown Fire Department on site. And the particulars of the filming schedule will be from November 12th through November 21st, and December 13th through the 18th. So please expect some traffic inconveniences in the area of Route 134 and Spring Valley Road. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact my office at 914-962-8152. Thank you.
Diana, do you know, is the film company reimbursing the police and fire department?
Yes, that's all been covered. The town does have a fee for that, and they pay the officers also.
Thank you.
And they don't need any extras, but, we'll try.
So the changes really focused on the setback issues, really primarily. There are also some modifications to height restrictions, some definitional, if that's a word, additions, right? We defined screening and buffering. And we also took out a section that was sort of anachronistic at this point.
Very good. So now, looking through it more, I know Sergio, you had some comments. Susan, you had some written comments that I had given to Adam. I have myself as well. Sergio, you want to?
Yeah, sure. So, to be quite honest, I really don't think these things belong in residential neighborhoods. I really wasn't a big fan of them to begin with, and I did support the jump from 2 acre to 5 acre as a minimum plot, at the very least, I think. I am a fan because it did help some of our larger existing farms with their survival, because I think a couple of our farms, John, am I right, to utilize the ground mount solar?
Yes.
I'm just not a big fan, and if there's going to be something and a new law comes out, I don't think the 200-foot setback is negotiable. I don't think it should be varied. I think if we say that we're going to put a 200-foot setback in, then that's it. It should be a 200-foot setback, and that's the bottom line. But to be quite honest, I do support, generating, clean energy. Absolutely. I give the example. My daughter went to Geneseo. I go up there, and everywhere I drive around, there's a house, there's something here, there's something there, and then there's this disheveled-looking piece of property with solar panels on it, because what ends up happening is people put them in, and then, it's not like a manicured thing or anything like that. I know there are some benefits to it. I don't agree with tearing down 100 trees and replacing them with 100 solar panels, as an example. That's why I support the ground mount solar in like a farm setting where the land is cleared already, potentially cleared. So I think that would be a good place. I think commercial properties with rooftop solar 100%. I think everybody should get solar panels. I'm actually looking into them for my house. I even bought an EV vehicle, hybrid. So I think that's where I'm at. I just don't want to see them in our residential neighborhoods, to be quite honest. I'd rather see housing.
The ground mounts we're talking about.
The ground, yeah.
Yeah.
Large scale, we're talking about large scale ground mount solar.
I agree.
Just so we're clear.
I think residential should go ahead and see what your roofs allow and whatnot. I think we should avoid the ground mounts in residential areas as well.
Okay, well, I'm glad to see some changes on this board from 2020 when we did the first law. It's about time. Okay, a little delayed. I
don't think that was necessary, but if you have some
Well,
comments,
no,
we're willing to hear it.
And thank you.
Okay, I've been talking about this for a long, long time. I did send the board a memo on November 8th with some suggestions. That's before I heard some of your comments. To start with, I think the very simple thing, the intent, the purpose and intent of law needs to be changed. It needs a greater sense of balance between energy and the other aspects of the environment. To get to your point about not in residential, while in theory I agree with you totally, I don't know if that is somewhat too drastic because you said it's okay for farms. Farms are residentially zoned. We don't have a separate agricultural zone like maybe upstate New York.
Maybe the farm has to be a certain amount of acreages.
Well, it does
Yeah.
under the current law.
Under the current law, a residential zone has to have a minimum, I think, is of 5 acres. But they're residential zones, and I think if anyone has gone by the Arcadia, the horse farm down on Baptist Church, you don't even see it. It's way back. It was pasture land. Hemlock Hill Farm was...
Which is the point. It was pasture land, right?
So that is my concern. So my suggestion as an alternative to consider, instead of doing it, say no commercial, no residential, and already the town doesn't want it in commercial zones because we want to save the limited commercial space we have for ground mounted, is to adopt what the town of Ossining has done. It's called a floating zone. You say, we're going to allow large-scale solar farms in
10 acres and more?
whatever. The point is, it's whatever acres you set, but somebody comes in who meets that minimum. The town board looks at it on a case-by-case basis and says, yeah, this meets our general criteria and we support it because you're not cutting down trees, it won't be visible.
It has screening. Yeah, okay, yeah.
And then you rezone that specific parcel. Right now, as long as it's allowed in a residential zone, you just get a special, you go to the planning board and you get a special permit.
Because it's just based on
isn't
one
that, isn't that
criteria.
the,
By having
hold
it-
on, hold on. Is not that the definition of spot zoning?
No, not if you have a floating zone. It's just like the concept of the overlay law.
You're right. It's a definition of spot
We-
zoning, but it's not a floating zone.
It's a floating zone. It's very much like the overlay law, which you the overlay law, we just created an overlay district, but you can have a floating zone. We have actually an agricultural floating zone overlay law. I'm not sure what the exact label is. It deals with certain agricultural parcels. This is an option that we can consider. Again, the town of Ossining uses it. So you look at a specific site because I don't know, there may be a location for residential. I wouldn't be opposed to banning it from all residential, frankly. Okay, but then you're basically saying if we're not going to have it on commercial and we're not going to have it on residential, you are limiting it basically to rooftops.
Who's saying we're not having it in commercial?
The law only allows. I don't think the law allows doesn't allow ground mount in commercial.
Not as a main.
Not as a main use. Not as a main use.
Only as an accessory.
Not as a main use. Okay. The only one who wanted one was one on East Main Street in Shrub Oak, and the planning board didn't like that for a variety of reasons. So basically, we're saying it's not going to be possible in Yorktown, which I totally support the rooftop, both residential
Yeah.
and commercial.
The
All
only
right.
the only reason why I mentioned our farms, and I think there's 7 of them, is because we definitely want to do everything possible to keep these farms alive and keep these farms thriving. And the U.S. is not agricultural anymore. Let's face it. Okay, especially not around here. And so some farms did utilize and did put ground mount solar on pasture land. So what we could do is we could specifically list the 6 or 7 farms that we're talking about. So this way, it's not just if there's something is zoned as farm, they could do it as well.
Well, I think
So
they-
I mean, I think you could further limit it that way, and you do have as an accessory use, you can put solar panels, ground mount solar on commercial property. So I don't think we're being overly restrictive. I think we're being very careful because this is an issue that we have to look at very clearly, very closely, and balance, the environmental impact of it as well. And it has
So-
positive environmental impacts and has negative ones too.
So, right, and once again, there's a balance. And look, we know that our grid is going to be taxed the more we go towards EVs and towards renewable energy. We lost Indian Point. There's a lot of energy that's off the table. So there does have to be a balance in what we look at and how we do it. Now, I'm glad you brought up the environmental issues because
Well, there are more, yeah.
No, I know, but I'm gonna kick it over to John because he and I have been having a lot of conversations about that on the environmental end, and I know So I said, I asked John a question, which he gave me that look like, "What are you, stupid?" I said, "How much?"
Energy.
Well, how much is a carbon trade-off with a tree coming down versus the solar that's being
so
that's being?
wishy-washy.
Well, no, actually, John was like, you're not looking at the whole picture.
Right.
You're narrow viewed. So, John, you want to just share with the rest
There's more than the tree.
our conversation on it's more than just the tree coming down. So if it's a residential lot and they take down the trees, this is where this all started. I'm sorry, I need to back up. If you take down the trees, either for solar, which is short term, or you could take it down for housing, because eventually if you don't sterilize that property, which is illegal to do, they're going to figure out a way to build on it. So the trees come down, and I was like, well, which is better, which is worse? Then we'll throw it to you, John.
Oh, thank you.
I think he combed his hair tonight for us. Look at him. He's looking
Actually,
good.
somebody cut it.
So I'm commenting on.
There's a lot to talk about that hasn't been spoken about. And I think there's a lot to understand that's not yet quite understood. I mean, a lot. And you've had a lot of very passionate commentary against solar, or certain respects of solar, I should say, which seems to be focused on ground mount and residential. And I find myself in the enviable position of having to speak what will seem like opposing that, but certainly it's not passionate. It's impassioned discussions. So with that, here I am. But I think that having solar in the town meets a lot of very laudable goals that the town has over and over again, including in their comprehensive plan, supported and are very firmly behind. You're using renewable resources, clean energy, green infrastructure. You're reducing fossil fuel emissions. You're reducing the use of fossil fuel electric generating plants and nuclear plants. You are increasing or decreasing costs for people, reducing our carbon footprint, and you're reducing energy or increasing energy independence of the state and the nation. All of those things come under the heading of things that the town has supported, and you'll find in the intent of the law. And solar does that, regardless of where it is. But if you do it in the amounts that really make a difference, I think you're doing something very positive. I think that's the first thing that we started talking about when we started talking about the law. And I think it's important to remember all those things. I really do.
One of your points, John, that really
Yeah.
rang true with me was, when you look at the housing versus the solar, in 25 years, when these are supposed to be decommissioned, who knows what energy sources we're on? Maybe we're scooping hydrogen.
Right. Well, yeah. And so let me use the example of a couple of
How do you get rid of the solar panels in 25 years? It's not like they're biodegradable.
Well, they have to provide a decommissioning bond and a decommissioning plan. So when it is no longer in use, they are required under the approval and our law to remove them and restore what was there before. I don't know if you knew that, but
Where do they go when they remove them?
they're taken to.
Thousands and thousands of
So are you
panels.
against all solar panels then?
No,
Okay.
no, I'm not. I stated it quite clearly that I'm not.
Okay. Well, I guess they go where the solar panels that are ground mounted would go, and along with the ones that are on rooftops and over commercial parking lots. I think they're going to all go to the same place. But let me just get to some of the other points. Do you want to?
I was just saying, like, how much is that bond for the decommission of those panels? Because you add inflation on for 25 years. Right now, they could say, okay, you know what, I'll give you $100,000. And now, all of a sudden, $100,000 comes and goes, well, I don't care. Keep the $100,000. It's your problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
I think the bonds are estimated in today's cost, and then there's cost increases factored
there's like a
into it.
percentage.
That's my belief. I'd have to go back and look.
just
Yeah.
the thought.
No, of course.
That's all.
That's all. I mean, that's all the practical stuff that goes on. There's a lot to speak about, but I'll use the Foothill installation as an example. Okay, it started out. It's a 34-acre piece of property. It has the Mohegan outlet runs through it, which is a stream, which goes right into the Peekskill drinking water. By the way, okay. Two sides of the stream is part of the property. One side of the stream was proposed for the solar, about 15 acres on one side. It was a 1.875 megawatt installation on 15 acres. The other side, the remaining acres, were left untouched, but I shouldn't even say that. As part of the tree mitigation, it's improved with understory and so on and so forth. It has deer fence around it. And so the forest on the other side that's remaining has been improved from what it was. So that's one of the pluses on this particular installation. The 1.875 and the 15 acres supplants what 2,870 something acres of forest would have to do per year from the energy that's producing, and now you no longer need to rely on the fossil fuel generation. So the Hill property, by comparison, which is 18 acres, but there's 15 acres also of panels, but in this case, the design is such that the rating is 3.7 megawatts. Those 15 acres, now I want to be clear and open about it, is that had less trees on it because it was a former farm and was not yet a full forest. So one had about 1,800 trees being removed. The other had 592, and that's not even talking about protected trees, non-protected trees. Okay, so difference. But nevertheless, 15 acres of those panels at 375 you would need 6,400 acres of forest to sequester the same amount of carbon per year. Okay, by comparison, 640 acres is a square mile. You're talking about 10 square miles of forest. That's 25% of the land area of Yorktown, 25%. The 15 acres is 0.0005. It's 5/100ths of a percent of Yorktown's land area. So for that installation, you're providing the carbon sequestration that 10 square miles of forest would do. And those calculations are required in our law that the developer has to do, and the equation comes from the EPA. You also have to think of it broadly, too, is that you have to remember 60% of our electrical generation is done by fossil fuels. And that's 25%. That's 60%. That's 25% of all the man-made fossil fuel emissions in the United States. So allowing the solar arrays in the manner that you have so far has large positives. And those are numbers. And as I said before, there's passion, and unfortunately, I'm laying out for you some of the dispassionate facts about it.
But you know, there is another environmental impact, and it's negative. And to your point, you said, you know, we have to make sure that we have this passionate plea and all of this stuff, but we're not taking in the full consideration. I haven't heard anything about the disposal of these panels and how that negatively will impact us 25 years from now. And you said you're going to have to plant the exact amount of trees that you took down when you take these panels out and throw them in the landfill, right? Which are never going to go away. And then how long will the trees that you plant 25 years from now take before they become environmentally positive? Because a tree doesn't grow overnight. So that there are other negative impacts to this that we're also not considering. And so I think we need to take the big picture and not just, you're
right.
That's where I'm at.
We do need to take the big picture.
Yeah,
I agree
absolutely.
100%, and I think that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get to the big picture.
Okay.
Okay.
And my question to you is,
Well-
once they remove
I'm listening.
when they remove the existing ground mounts that we're talking about, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Would they replace them with new ones?
They would have to get a new permit, but they could. But
Right.
we don't know what's going to be in 25
That's
years.
what
So
I'm asking.
let me
But
go.
I'm saying, but both are options, right? They would either have to plant new trees,
There's three.
or they
There's,
could.
there's three options:
Okay,
new panels,
right.
another installation, remove them and reforest it, or develop it with
Housing, whatever.
Yeah, housing. Right. Okay.
And maybe put solar on top of that with whatever.
Well, the solar on top of that usually benefits the homeowner
Yes.
and nobody else, really.
I'd like to go back to
So
pick up.
let me just finish
All right,
a few
what
points.
you said, sir.
So in terms of, back to the environment, you're not if you get into wanting to save the forest by eliminating the possibility of solar, you're not doing that because there's other land uses allowed. People have the right to develop their property, and all of the ones that we've seen have been talking about having or exerting some development pressure, almost every single one.
Which
The Hill Boulevard, including Foothill. Now, Foothill had a subdivision that they did. It was 22 homes. The conventional was on both sides of the stream. The cluster was on the one side of the stream. But when you compare those, the disturbance is very similar. In fact, the cluster had more disturbance to it. So you're still going to have, when someone stands up and says, what a disaster it is, you're still going to have that disaster. And you're going to have a land use that will not go away. There will be no more options. And likely, when you have housing or developed properties with hard structures, they redevelop into something more dense or something more intense. That's the more typical situation.
But what
with
is the positive impact?
the
of
positive impact
development?
is solar has
impact-
no
The
pollution.
positive impact of the development would be that it would contribute to the housing crisis that we have and mitigating that crisis. So we could go round and round all day long, and we could say, okay,
If you think that if you think the 22 homes are gonna do you a heck of a lot of good, then of course they would. Of
22
course
at a
they would.
time.
Of course they would. Of course. I don't know that we can sit
You
here
don't
and
go
argue
pyramid
about
from
numbers.
from the top to
I'll
the
I'll
down.
tell you right now that 22 homes will be 22 homes more for people to live in. Of course, that's true. There's nothing to say about that. But the solar will have no pollution, no traffic, no noise, no lights, no school kids, no non-school kids, meaning adults, not a managed landscape. It's not using energy. It's not polluting through oil burner. And if you have
How much septic does it use?
and septic, well, that's a good point. The septic tends to, if you understand what's happening at Lake Osceola, septics leach all through the groundwater, and then they have impacts on others. So you have drinking water source right there, right next to it. So the impacts of the human development are much greater than the solar impacts. And I'm not diminishing that you're removing trees, but you're removing trees for both. And the electrical generation provided by the solar panels is a huge exponential factor in helping reduce fossil fuel generating electrical plants.
And
We
I
need
agree.
more electrical as time goes on.
And I agree with that, and that's why I'm saying allowing them and listing specifically the farms that we have in Yorktown and allowing them, if they want to develop and in their pastures and stuff like that, that would also contribute positively.
Of course, and it has.
Exactly right.
Except that
So when
there's
you
not
made the
one
comment
farm.
that I didn't want solar. That wasn't exactly.
Well, I didn't say
accurate.
that you didn't want solar.
All right.
Okay. There hasn't been one farm in the town of Yorktown that hasn't removed trees. Arcadia removed 180 something trees.
Right.
So did Kitchewan Farm. So-
Arcadia didn't take,
Yeah.
not hundreds of trees, no.
180 something trees. Okay. Kitchewan removed trees. Hemlock, now they're active farms, and part of those areas were used at one. In fact, all of the area in Yorktown was used for farming, of course. But Hemlock was,
One
you know,
tree, I think.
that they weren't even using that.
Yeah.
That was just fallow land, and they took those trees down as well.
I think one tree maybe.
Okay, but it was
maybe
still not unused
How many
land that
panels
hadn't
did
been
they
used
put
in
up?
years and years.
I don't remember.
How many panels did they put up?
I'd like to go
It's
pick up a point
about
that you made.
about
Sergio.
1 megawatt. So I don't know the number of panels.
Yeah,
John,
and
John
ju-
what's Albany looking for megawatt wise? They're looking for like 240 megawatts. before
I
get-
think I don't know the number offhand. For some reason, 70 something sticks in my mind, but I don't know the number, and I don't want to throw out a number that's wrong.
And just so you guys and gals all realize, I did ask John to come here and sort of be like Mr. Spock, facts, not his opinions per se, not his what he feels one way or the other. So please note that he's just we had a conversation about facts and figures, and
I think he's
and
doing a good
cause and
job.
effect. I know. I just don't want it to devolve later on as we start going through this.
That's all right. That's all right.
One of the things to pick up on what Sergio and John was saying about the value and the carbon sequestration, one of the points that I made in my memo to you is one of the failures of our current law is that it only talks about measuring the carbon sequestration, and that's a given, that solar is always going to be better in terms of carbon sequestration. But I also sent the board members a document that listed all of the other benefits of trees, everything from stormwater control to climate control. More trees mean you need less air conditioning in the summer, which cuts down on electricity, and it also lowers your heating bills in the winter. There are aesthetic values. There are all kinds of climate values, property values. There are multiple, and I gave you, and some of those have been documented with percentages. Our law, if we go through with anything, any revision, one of the things that has to be done is you have to take all of the functions of trees and you have to compare all of the functions, not just list the functions, which was one of the changes the soft changes that got into one of the last revisions, but to compare the impacts of cutting down 500, 600, 700 trees, okay, versus not just carbon sequestration, but all of the other benefits that trees provide, and that's not in our law. So
Right.
that
I could-
has to be done.
From
And
your-
some of that can be quantified, which is the point that you made the
yes.
previous
From
time
your
that I brought
statement,
that
though,
up.
if I'm cutting down 500-600 trees on property that's not developed, it's not helping anyone cooling, heating, or anything.
It is, because if you live in the vicinity of it, the trees
Well,
are controlling the wind, which is controlling the weather.
200-foot setbacks. So I understand what you're saying, but it's not going to affect the individual homeowners living on that property because no one's living on the property. That's why
The ones
we're looking at
And
that.
if they develop-
adjacent
if they
to it,
develop
the ones in the
property,
area,
The
in the
one-
neighborhood.
But the
If they develop
200-foot
it, they're going to cut them
setback.
down anyways.
No, if you do cluster, okay, and if you do cluster, you're still going to save a lot of the land, and we could maybe encourage more. We're not doing very large subdivisions now in Yorktown, okay? It's just the fact of what's left on our land. But we do have a few large residential parcels left, but we can encourage cluster or flexibility, which saves a lot of land.
Well, one of the letters about this, and I think their attorney came in, was someone who lives off of Route 100, who you say right now that we don't have subdivisions, but this is the property down there was going to be subdivided, or at least one big
He could
residential area.
subdivide.
And the person who is very concerned about all over his property, the view shed, is his concern is that he might eventually want to move and subdivide his property on the way out for someone who could develop
Oh,
it.
that was that's one of the problems with the setback. And you even heard the Foothill subdivision, which I think Diana mentioned earlier, it's on the agenda, but she said the person's not going to be here. He basically said that property, 8 acres, I'm not sure, 16 acres, I can't remember.
It's about, something like that, 14, 16 something.
16 acres, right across the street from the Foothill Solar Farm, and it's zoned half acre or 1 acre.
1 acre.
1 acre. He says he can't even build single-family homes there because no one's going to buy a single-family home opposite a.
And he'd rather do a cluster, which is
No,
actually.
he wants to do multifamily housing because he has to make some money out of his property since he can't do seven homes.
I thought it was clustered.
Yeah,
He was
No,
thinking.
no.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
so that's it. There's another 100-plus acre parcel of undeveloped land abutting the Jacob Road parcel. So if he's going to be impacted, what is he going to say when he can't?
Right.
Eventually, that land might be subdivided.
Right.
To get back to your agricultural thing, I think because agricultural land, anything that's used for agriculture is zoned residential, that creates a problem, and I don't think you can limit it to what we now have as farms. Did you know that the Jacob Road parcel, where they're now putting solar farms, he was originally talking about putting a farm there. I guess his idea for a farm didn't work out, so now he's doing
Well, he has
solar.
approval for it.
What?
He has approval for it.
But he originally talked about farming that land. So
And
I'm
he
just
has
saying,
approval for that.
he has,
He has a 6-lot subdivision approved with the farming operation.
but now
So
he's,
if he doesn't get the solar, you're going to see the community farming operation and 6 homes. This is my point.
that's the
You
point.
will have development on these parcels.
And I'm not against that. The reason I brought the Jacob Road thing and the agriculture is to your point about it's difficult to say, I will allow it on agricultural parcels and not on other residential parcels. That's a technical issue.
on specific farms, naming them specifically.
But you don't-
Because they contribute to potential survival, which has happened in the past. And that's why I said that. And plus, these farms are so big, you said yourself, they're kind of like, you don't even see all the stuff, and it was mostly pasture land. And yes, there are trees that are gonna come down. And I don't know, I'm kind of intrigued about the farm use and the 6 houses. That sounds pretty good to me.
Well, so, yeah, and of course. But
Another farm in Yorktown, I'll take it.
all right. So, just in terms of saving land back to Foothill, as I said, it started out as 15 acres on 34, saving more than half of it. And through technology, it is now, I think, about 10 acres because there's a leg of it that they don't need to do any longer. So it's about 9 to 10 acres on 34 acres for 25 years, generating electricity that you don't need to use fossil fuels for, which is enough that 2,800 acres of forest would be needed for the same amount of electricity generation without all of those impacts that I talked about.
And it's-
Are there impacts that you talked about? You're going to lose the 22 homes? Yeah. Okay, for 25 years, yes.
John, do they have a calculation that says, you know what, I need for 1 megawatt, I need, because you said it went from 15 acres to 10 acres, like with new technology and stuff. So is there like a calculation where they're profitable with making 1 megawatt and they're happy with that? Or In other words, they're not going to come back and go, hey, you know, the other side of the thing, I can make another megawatt if we cut down those trees on the other side of the.
Well, it's
Well,
gotta
well, they
make-
could have.
Makes sense for the
They,
developer.
they
right?
could have.
That's the
Right.
percentage of land utilization, and that's another issue that I think we have to look at. The current law says you can use 80% of your land for solar panels. No is in a residential development, you might be limited to what, 20% coverage? So I think if we're going to redo
It's not coverage, though. I mean,
It's-
the point is
you have
disturbance.
disturbance to the land.
Okay, so that's right.
So I think that's another area that we need to look at if we're going to allow any ground-mounted solar wherever.
And I just went through the calculations that I told you about Foothill, where the conventional was 13, the solar was 14 and change, close to 15, and the cluster, believe it or not, was 16. So they're about the same.
And we have a god-awful industrial-looking facility in a beautiful residential neighborhood. And if you listen to somebody who lives on Eleanor, which is a parallel street to Foothill, she now sees the solar farm
The-
from
and-
her property.
and the
Okay,
screening
and it
is
will
not
diminish
yet-
the value of
s-
the properties on that
screening-
side of Eleanor.
Screening is not yet installed on that. So
At all? There's no screening at all?
it's not yet installed.
I don't know what the screening will be.
And by the way, climate control, in terms of climate control, doing the solar and removing the necessity to generate electricity with fossil fuel is one of the best things you can do right now.
I'm talking about the climate control.
In the general
in-
area.
In the general area, that trees contribute
But
to
if you talk about the
reducing climate
balance, which we're
control.
talking about the balance, you got to look at everything. And,
You have to
and-
look at, yes,
Yeah.
it is a question of balance. And what I'm saying, and I've been saying for years, is that the current law and the amendments did not achieve the proper balance. So if you're going to, I think if we're going to amend the law, and we have to, we can't, and we've got to get this
That's why
done.
we're here, yeah, that's why we're
So
here.
let's look at the issues. The issue is, where do you want them located? We've heard some comments, not in residential neighborhoods, okay? That's, I think there are 3 people who say not in residential neighborhoods. We've got to clarify the agricultural issue, all right? That's one thing. Another issue is comparing the impacts, not just carbon sequestration, but comparing all of the impacts of the loss of, when you're talking about a lot of trees. You have the option of the amount of land coverage. Screening is a critical issue, and I think we've all seen the problems with screening.
And
That
hold on,
whether-
a second. And the setback, right, Sergio? You had mentioned that?
the setbacks, the setbacks and the screening, and the amendments that we did not pass in December actually weakened the screening. So if you're concerned about screening, you have to think about strengthening screening. So that's an issue.
I think the language that it had to be fully screened is something that's John, you'll attest to this. It's just not obtainable. It's not something you could strive to have something fully screened, but I mean, you know, and I know I made a couple of comments. I mean, if you're on a hill and you're looking down, you know, what are you going to have? 400-foot trees, so this way you could cover that angle and this angle and that angle. I don't think, you know, the term fully screened, and we've gotten a lot of excuse me, and we've gotten a lot of feedback on that because it's just something that you know, in maybe in a small, if everything is ideal, and the solar panels are in an area and all the land around it is flat, you know, yeah, maybe you could fully screen something, but land's not flat, and I just don't think that that's an attainable goal, and it's going to be something that we're going to be subjected to criticism all the time.
The hairs were split on that definition, period.
Well,
Yeah,
that-
absolutely.
that's-
I mean, it's just incomprehensible to think that you could screen it and never see it from anywhere.
And everybody was like, "Well, that's what it says. Well, that's what it
And
says."
that-
And,
okay,
that,
and
and
that's-
that's what I think
that's-
was the advent of changing the language.
It was to make it reasonable, but nevertheless to make sure that the planning board is doing the best possible scenario in terms of screening the facility. I will be the first to tell you that they are not the greatest thing to look at by any stretch of the imagination. In particular, the undercarriage and understructure of those things, okay?
So, John, with that being said, like, who takes care of the maintenance on them? I know they're supposed to, but again, it's going back to the enforcement of it. You know, like, so these people have the solar farms, and then, you know, you
Yeah,
have
so-
storm damage or something like that.
Right, so
And I
the-
know the EMS and the fire.
Right.
You know.
The requirement is to inspect it every year and to replace it as needed, the screening. Of course, as a,
I'm not even talking about. I'm talking about the farm, the solar farm itself. I know that it's
Oh.
their responsibility. Of course, it's their
to
property.
change out the panels or something
No,
like that?
no, no. Just if so, you know, just the maintenance on it. So the undergrowth, you know what I mean. So
Well,
the
they're go-
weeds
yeah,
and all
okay.
that
They're going to
stuff.
maintain the undergrowth and whatever meadow they plant because they don't want anything to grow up too high and shade the panels. So they'll be out there taking care of that. You know, there's been talk about using, you know, goats and things like that, but nevertheless, they'll probably mow it once or twice a year. And that's how that will take place. The
And-
screening is required to be inspected once every year by the owner or operator and replaced in kind where it's found to be lacking. That doesn't relieve us of our own enforcement capabilities, which there's many instances in our code and other laws that you know that we can enforce that kind of thing.
Which-
the
which we
landscaping
don't.
plan.
So potentially can we add that to the decommission bond so that if they don't do it and they say,
Well, they got to do it every year. It's long before decommissioning even gets to
I
that
know they're
point.
supposed to do it.
Yeah.
But you know how it goes.
If
you
they
know.
don't do it-
the owner's in Florida, you know what I mean? And he's like, yeah, we'll get to it. You know.
Well, then he'll get a
Which is
violation. Then he could and should get a violation.
Yeah.
Which is my point, and that's why I bring up, you know, Geneseo. I go there, and these things are not maintained. They're not, and they don't look nice. You know, they're not nice to begin with. And I understand the need, and we really have to, you know, be responsible. I think we could be responsible, and we could fulfill the need, and we could do it in the right way, and in such a way that everything gets managed. Now, that might mean that we're not going to produce, you know, 1.21 gigawatts of electricity. By the way, I wanted to tell you look like him a little bit. Yeah,
Little like Emmett Brown?
He looks like him a little bit. So you don't think he looks like him a little bit? I think he looks like. Look, you want to say it? So anyway, my point is I think there is a way forward. I hear what you're saying. You know, to the point of getting the big picture and the pollution. A storm comes through. There's 1,000 solar panels. I'm going to be, very open about. Not open. I'm gonna just go beyond the scope. Let's say you have 1,000 solar panels, and a storm comes by, and all 1,000 solar panels break. All right, maybe it's not going to be 1,000. Let's just say hypothetically, okay? That's pollution, because that is going to go into our landfills or wherever solar panels go to rest in peace.
Then we shouldn't have solar panels.
Well, no, I'm just saying that when we look,
We shouldn't have electric cars then either.
But we're looking at the big
You know,
picture.
where
right?
does it end, right? Where does that end?
But we're looking at the big picture, right?
We're trying to balance things
All
out.
right, well, so that's part of
that
the
seems
big
to me
picture.
somewhat of an imbalance.
So we
that's
have
part of
this-
the big picture that nobody has mentioned.
We have this great thing called the computer here. And I went to this thing called Google and said, what happens, how do you dispose of solar panels?
Let's hear it.
So there are three ways: recycle, landfill, and hazardous waste. So the big thing that I looked at was recycling. So right now it is expensive. They recycle the glass, they recycle the metal frames, and then they get rid of the things. So as it says here, recycling solar panels can be expensive and difficult in the United States. The cost to recycle a solar panel can be higher than the revenue from the recovered materials, not from what it's brought in.
Well, then that should be part of the bond.
However, researchers are exploring new techniques to improve the efficiencies and cost effectiveness of recycling. So, yes, it is a work in progress, and I know my solar panels are actually Tesla panels, and, you know, I just saw Elon Musk catch a rocket coming back to Earth.
Well, what's
So if anyone
what's
could
the
figure
discussion
out-
about the toxic or
For the
hazardous waste?
toxic, if a solar panel is not verified as non-hazardous, it is considered hazardous waste and must be disposed of accordingly.
Okay. Well, I guess it depends on what they're made of, right?
John, is there a percentage of land or something that the town would like to see have solar? Or it's just
No, I don't
it's
think
case by case basis?
I don't think there's a percentage that we'd like to see. But there's only, there was a map that somebody developed which was disingenuous to the extent that not all those properties would likely be proposed for solar because a lot of them were public parks or public land. A lot of them
Some of them weren't even developable.
weren't even developable.
right? Yeah.
The other thing is you need to be close to the infrastructure to connect into. It makes little sense and drives up the cost if you have to run all of that
Yeah.
infrastructure over to the parcel in question, and they shy away from those. They are looking for the ones that they can get into the connection and make it work, without adding infrastructure and overhead lines and all that other objectionable stuff that's out there that we tend to dismiss.
I'm just, like, you made some very valid points tonight that, from me personally, I think it's a big business and it shouldn't be in residential,
Well,
but you
I'm
made
glad you
some,
mentioned that.
was that?
I'm glad you mentioned that.
It's just something that, for me personally, I think that it's a big business. It doesn't belong in residential. But you made points that it's either we have to participate in solar or we're going to make an excuse not to have any solar in Yorktown.
So,
I think there is a balance.
I get it, but
in the residential zones, if you wanted to deposit waste material, do you think that would be objectionable in an industrial use?
I think so.
Well, it's allowed.
Yeah.
How about the extraction of minerals, stone, gravel? Industrial? That's allowed.
Just shows the
How
how
about-
antiquated our zoning code is. That's what that
It may.
shows.
But nevertheless, camps and day camps, that's a business.
I can't
Nursing
get that in my
homes?
backyard.
Nursing homes, daycares, hotels and restaurants, you can do it on certain circumstances in residential zones. Tourist homes, you can do them. And I would be remiss to not mention that farms are a commercial enterprise.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you characterize it, this is the thing that I say about understanding and having a broad understanding of these things is that there's a lot going on in our residential zones, and just to say in a capsule that solar is a commercial zone shouldn't be in residential, it's just a mischaracterization. Not to mention the fact that it is less impactful on most of the fronts than all of those that I just
Yeah,
listed. Far
made-
and away.
But
Look
we,
at-
but
you-
we
you
currently
edu-
have a proliferation of this stuff in Yorktown and a lot of projects coming in, and we've had a lot of projects already, which we've approved.
Well, I don't know that you
So-
have a lot of projects coming in.
I mean, that's the difference.
You have-
We don't have a lot of people coming in that want to mine rocks in residential zones right now.
But that-
and if we did,
There might be some properties that
They're
do it,
mining
and
Bitcoin.
there was a property here that was doing it. But we have six approved projects. There's 3 under review. One's on the roof, so that's 2, and then 4 were withdrawn. Which is, it wasn't just the Shrub Oak Plaza. You had the Granite Knoll Sports Complex, which was drawn, and you also had the Yorktown
That's different.
Nursing Center up on Field Home.
So, John, you bring up a good point.
They never came. They
Never came back either.
That was. Yeah, that was right. That was a combination canopy and ground mounted, and they
Canopy
didn't
and
come
ground
back.
mount,
Okay, they
and-
didn't come back. That's why to get back.
Just one second, while it's in my mind. I'm sorry, Susan. So, to your point, part of the law, Susan, that we have to make part of the law is the moratorium is also affecting the large scale roof mount that we have at Curry, right? Currently.
That one in-
So
that one in
that's something
particular right
else
now.
that we have to put to not eliminate or make it illegal to do large scale rooftop.
No, we want to encourage that.
We want to encourage that.
we
But that's
definitely-
another thing that we could put in the law if you want to write that down. I'm sorry I cut you off.
Yeah. I'd like to get back to, I think, which is one of the fundamental issues, and that's, do we want to allow ground-mounted solar in residential neighborhoods? That is the issue. And with all due respect to John and his arguments, this is a decision that we make as a board, okay? And then we put it up and we ask our attorney to draft a law, and then we subject it to a public hearing, and then we hear the pros and cons. But that's why we need this discussion before the attorney gets, just like with the vape law. This board has to decide the parameters of what it wants before the attorney drafts the.
Susan, you don't need to be condescending. They understand why we're here
Okay,
already.
so I think there's been enough discussion about the concerns about residential. Do we want to take, not an official vote, but a consensus kind of a sense as to what we want to see to give direction to Adam, who will probably work with John, as to what we as a board would like to see? Okay, do we want to ban it from residential? Do we want to have some kind of exclusion for agricultural? Okay, do we want more of a balance between trees, and to talk about the functions and quantify the benefits of trees and balance that off in addition to sequestration? Do we want to limit the amount of coverage? Okay, do we want to increase the acreage? How do we want to deal with screening? The screening comes into looking at it on a case-by-case basis. You mentioned the problem with topography, which is an issue that came up with the Jacob Road parcel. If the board looks at it on a case-by-case basis and then rezones it and says, you know what, there's not a topography issue, there are no other issues where it's located, it's not going to impact anybody, this makes sense, okay, let's have this floating zone, and now we do this, and we say this is a good parcel for it because we want to participate and achieve the benefits of solar, and we do have to promote solar.
Under those circumstances, from what you just said, you might as well just ban it altogether. Because it's going to have effect, it's going to have a view, there's going to be view shed.
Maybe not. Arcadia Farm, you don't see.
You do, you see it, but you see that more on the rooftop as you drive by, but you could see it. Especially if you're out driving slow.
I'm not
looking at
the
your
ground
phone.
mounted on Arcadia. You don't see that.
But you see their whole roofs aligned.
I'm talking about ground mounted. You do not see.
I'll have to go back because I remember going to the site when they were looking at it.
You do not see it from the road as you're coming down Baptist Church Road. She backs up on her own property, and she backs, and then also on I think it's
They did that.
county
They were
land.
doing that part to the right last time I was there. So you have the farm up on the left. They were taking a field on the right, if I'm not mistaken.
think
if I'm
so.
looking at it.
So
And
some
there was a viewpoint of it.
some parcels it works, and others it doesn't. It doesn't work. It didn't work on the Hill property. It doesn't work on Foothill. You see it as you're coming down Foothill. It would not look proper at Jacob Road. All right.
Yeah, you're always going to see
Well,
this
it
stuff.
works
so-
on- I have to say it works
where
on
it
Hill
works,
Farm.
it's okay. That's what I'm saying. If you look at it on a case-by-case basis, okay, and
sorry.
not just make it
But
blanket.
John,
you're-
you've done the
you're
site
allowed.
visits. I'm sorry, what were you saying about?
No, Hill Farm is, any view that you have of it right now, which the screening is not yet mature, is from a commercial zone, and that's a different standard
It's
under the law. It's a different standard. If you're going to put them in commercial areas over parking lots, or even in a field next to
the
your
Hill
store,
property-
you don't have to screen them.
as long as I've
Don't.
been in Yorktown, which is 54 years, we always wanted to keep Route 6 as a green strip, and for a good portion we are. The big difference between when you're in Yorktown and then you hit that Lexington Avenue line and you go down there and then you see I hate to say this, but a Central Avenue, Yonkers kind of a look. We have this lovely green belt, which with a few incursions, okay? So that is an offense. The one on Route 6 is an offense to
Underneath the power lines, yeah.
it's
I
an offense.
got to.
Susan, I think that's why we started the moratorium. I think we all know that. That's
It's
ugly. We all
it's
know
an
that.
offense. Go,
We know
go
that.
I
down-
don't
go
disagree.
down
They
Foothill.
are ugly.
Susan, we
They are ugly,
know
that's
that.
for
That's
sure.
why
John
we.
says it's
That's
okay. John
no.
says it's okay.
John-
No, I said it's successful in how the law is written and what it intended to do, and that the view that you see is from a commercial zone, which has a different standard. That's what I said. I didn't say it looks fine.
John,
or
you were
great.
about to make a point about 30 seconds ago. Do you remember what that was?
No, that's
Where
too
does the
long.
board? Where does the board want to go on this?
I think we have a set of parameters that we've all discussed. I think what do you think? I mean, we put Adam to work on it a little bit.
Yeah, so look, here's my feeling. if it could be properly screened and be inintrusive to the area, I think that we've sort of been backed into a corner with the closure of Indian Point, that we're going to need the power. We are going to need electricity. I like the fact that you did the math and it's 10.1 square miles for the 3.7 kilowatts. I think that's an important aspect. I'm not a fan of some of the things that Albany has done, but that doesn't mean we take it out on our residents and say, well, sorry, don't worry about it in the summertime when we don't have enough electricity.
Yeah.
You know, and in California, I think this year, they recommended setting your air conditioners to 82 degrees.
Yeah.
I'm dying. I'm dying in here right now.
Yeah. I hope you don't think that I'm suggesting that we have to follow anything that comes out of Albany. Not
I
in the
know,
least.
but-
I think we should follow our own heart, and that's why I started with
Absolutely.
some of the things that I talked about.
But we have to balance what the condition is and what we have to
Yeah.
deal with. And bottom line is we're going to have to deal with our energy and the renewables. So, you know, there's
So-
definitely a
My 2 cents, Ed, I'm agreeing with you. At the beginning of this, I was like, you know, just residential only, but you had some very valid points, John. You know, and I do think that we could redefine this where I like the whole percentage, you're only allowed to use a percentage of the property. So, you know, right now it's 20%, but maybe that, I think that has to be increased to
No,
30,
now it's
40.
now it's 80%.
I know that, Susan, okay? 20%, it has to stay buffered, right?
No, you can use 80% of your
What's 80
parcel.
minus
And
100?
then
well,
he's
no,
going
he's
the,
saying
he's going the
80,
next.
he's talking about the buffer.
He's
What's
20%.
80 minus 100?
20.
He's coming at it from the
It's-
other direction.
Yes,
20%.
okay?
Good job,
That-
Serge.
So I said
I did that.
80% of it,
I
20%
did it.
needs to be, is right now is being buffered.
you guys do that
We
nice
increase
stuff
that
that
to
you
30 or 40%. There's some things that we can do that we could strike a balance, like you said. You know, I think that I like the whole idea of the floating zone where we take it on case by case. And the biggest thing is I think the bond has to be very, very big because
That's a very good point.
they're just going to walk away when they got their money and they're, you know, the last 5 years, you know, I'm moving to Florida and I'm out of here. And your problem, Yorktown. And we want that bond big enough that we could take care of everything and not take the cheapest way to get rid of these panels, but the most expensive way on these panels. That, you know, we have to make a worst case scenario to get rid of those panels.
Well, wouldn't that be, once it's decommissioned, as part of the decommissioning plan, that it's the owner's responsibility to dispose of the
And
panels?
Susan, I
It's
get
not
that.
ours.
So what they do a lot of times is they'll put a bond up, and to decommission the panels, let's just say it costs $500,000. Well, 25 years ago, we got a bond for $100,000. So they turn around and go, Yorktown, your problem. You can keep the $100,000, and you can get rid of the panels.
Oh,
and
no,
then
I
now we're
agree.
now we're on the hook for $400,000.
I
you know,
definitely
so-
agree with you that
I'm-
we have to look at the amount
I'm
of the bond.
just giving
yeah.
you my opinion. You asked what the board is, and these are some of the issues that, you know, John made some valid points. And if we want to participate in solar in the town, you know, we have to craft the law so that we're able to fulfill everybody's needs, both sides,
Yes.
for solar and for not, you know, opposed to it.
So
you
what,
know?
what direction does this board want to give Adam? Luciana, Sergio, I think three of us are more inclined to say no to residential.
I think I'd like to see some kind of a law that maybe there'd be two competing ones or with subtle differences that may take into effect what you're saying as a floating zone. I don't know. I'm not quite.
I actually really like the floating
I
zone.
like the floating zone.
Because I don't want to
think
leave
it's
anything
nice.
open and sterile.
I don't know how I feel about it. I'd like to see what it looks like.
Right. I'm saying I like the idea
Why
of
don't
it.
Why don't you guys have a conversation offline with John
Yeah.
and or
I gave
Adam
you
on? I know what you gave us.
Yasning.
Yeah.
It might be
I
other
think that
floating
it still
zones.
needs to have a certain number of acres to put them on, and that there should be
Well,
a
that's in
checklist
there.
of experience.
We
Yeah, I'm
still-
saying I
We
need
still
that.
define that. We define the acres. We find the setback. We, you know, But we also,
But I'm not.
even on the parcel of land, you have the acreage, the setback, and then you're only allowed to use X percentage of it. You know, we shrink that from 80 to,
70.
60, 40, whatever it is, whatever we think, you know? And you got to think of the business person and find out, well, what's a typical acreage that they need to make money or make a gigawatt,
And
a
listen,
megawatt.
I'm not a big fan of them, but I am also aware that I was wearing a tank top 2 days ago, and today I have 3 sweaters on. So there is something to be said on understanding, like, and the amount of energy bills are just through the roof. So I don't want to take anything off. I do not want them in residential areas where they're clustered and they're almost invasive. And I don't think we're talking about that. I think that if it's done delicately and we have all the specs met, just like you were speaking about, like how we do the overlay district, maybe there's a floating district around it. I don't think that we should be discriminating against one farm to another farm because I think sustainability is there. I don't think that there's a full agriculture, Sergio, so I'm not completely disagreeing with you, but I do want to go back to where we can find our own resources, where we're putting back nutrients into this earth so that it can feed us back. And I think that without having some sort of movement, we need some flexibility because if eggs are $7 and to build a coop costs thousands of dollars, I don't know how we're going to feed people. So I feel like there needs to be some sort of savings.
Well, I think the floating zone gives you flexibility.
Yeah, I like,
It-
and I
it gives
also like the idea. It
flexibility.
also gives us eyes on the project.
Let's,
Yeah.
I think before you jump into floating zone,
we have to look
once
at it.
again, yes, look into it, get definitive, make sure you have a full understanding of it, because it's great to say a floating zone, but like I said, it almost sounds like spot zoning. And I know what you're saying, Susan, you're trying to compare it to the overlay districts, but
But maybe it's called something else, Supervisor.
I would really
But the
look
overlay
into it
district
hard.
is set. It's something
Correct.
that's set. It's not like we say, okay, we're going to make this an overlay district.
Right,
Well,
and
the
then,
overlay district is a district, it's multiple properties. Spot zoning is typically one property.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
It-
which,
it's-
which
it's-
sounds like a
it's-
floating
it's
zone.
So I don't
not
think,
spot
I don't think it's a
zoning.
good comparison. I understand the point. You overlay, I
It's
get the
it's
point,
not
but
spot
I mean,
zoning.
it's not a apt
All right.
comparison.
very good.
Adam, you know
Adam,
what
yep.
we want to do? You have direction?
Poor Adam.
It's all
Adam, put
perfectly,
this all
it's all
together.
perfectly clear. Thank you.
Perfectly clear.
Adam's moving to Miami tomorrow.
No, I'm very serious. Do you have a sense, if we said, okay, after tonight's discussion, Adam, draft something,
I highly recommend you watch the tape due to
He
all the
was,
confusion.
he was taking notes, and
Yes, of
he
course,
and I
so
will
do.
sit
You have
down
mine
and review again when we have our significant projects meeting, and we'll try to get something looked at. But right now, there's a little bit of disagreement on the board for the exact way we want to go at it, and I think that's important for people to sit back today after tonight's meeting, think about it, and
Tighten that up.
please feel free to call me individually and let me know.
I would suggest instead of a call, because if you speak to Luciano or you speak to Pat, then I don't know what's going on. I think
Email?
either email or we have another board discussion in,
Well, we're probably going to have
weeks.
another board
Yeah, for
discussion.
sure.
It's not going to be in 2 weeks because I'm trying to bring in, well, first off, we don't have a meeting in 2 weeks. It's Thanksgiving weekend. And we'll have it on our work session. The next work session, we will have the battery moratorium, and I'm trying to bring in a couple of experts on large-scale battery storage
Which is
to
also going to be
speak. And
helpful.
that reminds me, John is going to call you about your guy, and I have a former fire commissioner from
Which
Yonkers
I also think
who
is good
works with all
intel
that
for
stuff.
this.
with the battery storage, I have no idea what the problems are.
Yeah, right.
With
so
the
it's great
battery
to have those
storage.
presentations.
Yeah,
That's
so
what I've said.
so
I don't know
we'll,
what the
we'll have
issues
someone
are.
in for a presentation, but there's no way to put them out if there's a fire.
Well, but we can't keep delaying this because we've
we're
already.
we're not going to delay it, Susan. But I could tell you that the agendas for November and December are pretty full already, and we have the budget meeting. We have some other things that are coming up tonight. So it probably will have to wait until the first work session in January, and we'll get there.
The
Unfortunate-
moratorium ends, I think, the end of March, so if you're talking, because what I think I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're saying that we have not agreed to any parameters to give Adam enough information. We need another discussion before Adam puts.
Well, we have a lot of information.
I think we have to tighten our thoughts up.
I just want to see if I have a majority of board members who are, you know what, I don't want it in residential, or I'm willing to stay open to residential, because that's what Adam's going to need for guidance. If I have 3 people who are dead set against it, that's fine. I know where it's going to go. Right now, I have Sergio saying I need to look at it a little better, which I appreciate. I have
Me too.
Luciana
I'm
saying,
not for it, so I would like to look at it a little bit better.
right. So let them make a
thank you
decision.
for
I
the
think
information.
you are in favor of not having it in residential, and Patrick is.
I would prefer a floating zone and leave it possible open to residential.
And that's why I think I just want to explore it a little
Let
bit
them
more.
explore that, and if then we have a consensus.
I wanna leave the
and
option
I'm not.
open for
I'm not going
solar.
to count myself in the consensus per se. So I want to see where everyone wants to go. I think it's more appropriate to get that information.
What about you, Pat?
I agree with Susan. I like the floating zone, and I like expanding. Right now, it's at, you could use 80% of it. I want to shrink that so it's a little bit less.
Tighter, yeah.
I want to make sure that the bond is. My big thing is it's
Adequate.
covering
More
the
than adequate.
decommission, and it's covering the violations, and make sure that bond is big enough so that, okay, and you got to make it worst case scenario. The guy that owns the plot of land, he's in Florida, and he's getting violations every week, and that's fine. We're going to take out the bond.
Those are all the conditions.
gonna get a
Many of
goat.
the conditions that are right now in the law for special permits would be incorporated into the floating zone,
Or whatever this zone looks like.
whatever you call it, with changing the
one-
things.
So I
So
think-
I think before, you might have a discussion with Adam, but before Adam starts to draft anything, I think we need.
So once again, we have a lot of definition on where people want to go. I would like, including myself, I'd like everyone to explore a floating zone and see. Just because Ossining has it doesn't mean it's right, legal, anything. Anything can be put into a law, and then it can be challenged. And I want to make sure that we're not overstepping in the zoning and in the planning areas and what our zones are supposed to be. And I don't think it's appropriate to rezone it out of commercial, because that was in that definition, out of residential. I'm sorry. Either it's approved or not. Do we have to make up a new zone? Is that floating zone something new called solar, wherever the hell we
Yeah,
decide
it's
to
a
put it?
solar floating zone. I think, John, you could probably do some more research about other floating zones. I think maybe New Rochelle has some floating zones. I mean, New Rochelle is not apropos, and I don't know what their
on
floating
solar
zones are.
or on other things.
Not on solar, but on other things. The concept of floating zones, if you could give us more information about where floating zones are used in other localities, and the board may not know that we have, I don't think it's called the floating zone, but in our code, there is one for, on agricultural use. In other words, it's residential property, but if it's used for agriculture, there are regulations if it wants to be developed, but you want to preserve some of it for agriculture. So that's buried away
All right,
in our code.
So we'll take
We
a
need
hard look at it, and if John, you could help direction and
Some
Adam.
more examples of,
Yeah.
of other floating
And I
zones
think-
used for other purposes.
I think we email you
Yeah.
our concerns,
Well, I
or
already-
a
yeah.
bullet, or just.
Well,
4 or 5
well,
bullets
you
of what
you
we-
could email it to Adam, and I'm already seeing, a pattern, and that's great. So let's just, once again, the floating zone idea, I need to know more about it. Because like I said, I think spot zoning, and I know that I know you don't think it is, but I've heard you
Sounds like it.
tell people what they didn't think was spot zoning in the past. So it's all in the eye of the beholder. We all look at a different window. Let's just,
We just got to find that
Get the-
word.
yeah.
Find that word. And
Yep.
then I think we're all at the same
Yes.
point, but we just got to find the proper.
all
word.
right. So we could, we'll move on to the Santucci properties on Kipling Drive, Halleck's Mills Sewer District.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Daniel, do I have anyone from the Santucci properties?
I have a question and a comment on this. The memo that we got late this afternoon
Yes.
only talks about 451. I looked at the map, on the agenda,
841.
841, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
No, I just want to make sure, yeah.
is for 2 parcels.
Right.
851 is on the other side, and it's a 1.6 acre vacant parcel along a whole strip of
Yeah, but I
vacant
think
parcels.
841 was the only one that was
Well-
tampered with and remodeled.
Well, here's the
But
thing.
861, 851
Hold on, can
also
Dan-
wants
Dan-
to go
Dan,
in.
let us know.
Yeah, I know.
That's right for
Here's an answer.
redevelopment.
And
Thank
so
you.
what you had, this is Kipling Drive. So this is, it's not town roads back there. So everybody comes in and has to get a variance. So there was one house with an accessory structure that was connected to the sewer. So at some point, the owner moved the property line and put the accessory structure on another lot that was never in the sewer district. So it really boils down to the lot that's what you're looking at is a vacant lot. If you looked on, the tax map was not updated to reflect the lot line change. The vacant lot, the lot line moved over and now includes this accessory structure. I think it's like a barn with an apartment upstairs.
But that wasn't there before.
The structure was always there.
No,
it
but
was
the line wasn't there before in that
But-
place.
Right, so the vacant lot got bigger, and when it got bigger, this structure became part of that lot.
But it's still is at the 851, 841.
Whatever one I said on the memo,
Yeah.
841.
That's a newfound lot, which includes part of 851.
But there's also 852,
Right.
okay?
852 is already
I'm
in.
sorry, 851. I'm sorry.
one lot is in already, has been connected for years. So the issue before us, normally we were looking at a vacant lot. They would have had to come in on the vacant lot. And now the vacant lot has been modified. It's no longer vacant because now it includes a pre-existing structure. So that's the part that has to go into the district.
All right, I don't think I have a problem with that, okay? But the requests seem to be 841 and 851.
All right, I'm just trying to clarify what needs to happen.
All right, I think I need clarification between 841 and
So I think what
851.
happened when it was 841 and 851, and then
it's
when the
two
lot
separate-
line changed, though, the structure that was on 851, that was actually on 841.
According to
Can I just state one thing? The request we received from the applicant was for 851 and 841. Typically, we would refer this out before the town board makes a decision on it so that comments can be made and clarifications like this can be
To see
done.
where the line is.
So,
Yeah, because according to the granted outdated tax map, okay, it does look like there were 2 structures on 841.
Right.
So I can understand that he made the lot line adjustment and you want to basically allow the existing barn, whatever it is. That I have no problem with. It's the 851, which is a
Well, they-
1.6 acre parcel.
I mean, we'll refer it out. I mean, I think
So I think it has to be
the
referred out for
one has been in the
clarification.
district and has been paying tax in the
Yeah.
district.
We said we were gonna refer it out, so,
Yeah.
Ed, you wanna refer it out?
To the
Yeah,
appropriate
so,
department.
well, let me
Also-
just, stop, please. We're putting the cart 2 miles in front of the horse right now. So the question is, they want to go in, this is the buy-in amounts here, or the bonds, and it's a percentage of what's sold.
I
So
mean,
they'll
it
have
looks
to-
like it'll be $1,700-1,800 would be the buy-in.
Okay, so they'll have to do that based on what's been there. So if we send it out for referral to the county especially, we should get some of these answers back. So could I have a motion to send this out for
Motion.
referral? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, thank you. All right, Foothill subdivision proposal is off tonight, I guess. So we have a workers' compensation administrator RFQ presentation, which we'll hold for another hour. No, just joking, Janelle. Uh-oh. Do not like that. Uh-oh. And as Diana gets in, Janelle, why don't you introduce yourself to the crowd since you hide upstairs?
Hi, I'm Janelle McNeil, I'm the town comptroller. So tonight I put together a little presentation for the board regarding our workers' comp vendor.
Yep.
Okay.
So in this presentation, we explain how we do it right now, or?
Oh, yeah.
Good, okay, good.
Yep.
All right,
Okay, so we went out for an RFQ on September 24th. We solicited qualification from vendors to provide services for a fully insured plan versus a self-funded plan. Currently, the town has a self-funded plan. So we received back 2 proposals. One was from PMA, who is our current workers' comp third-party administrator. They are a for-profit organization. They've been in business for 30 years. They have 200-plus public clients nationwide, and they're a Fortune 500 company. The second proposal that we received was from PERMA. PERMA has a board of directors that's made up of public officials that are elected from the PERMA membership. They are a non-for-profit organization, and they're a public entity pool. They have 40 years in the workers' compensation business. They have 700-plus public clients, and they only operate in New York. The clients are made up of only towns, counties, schools, special districts, so they're all government agencies. The company was specifically designed for municipalities by municipalities, and they are the largest membership in New York with public entities. So the 2 different structures between PMA, our current one, is that it's self-funded. That means that the town pays for every transaction that is incurred. They are a third-party administrator plan. How it works is there's a yearly administrative cost, and then there's fees that are structured for every single transaction that happens. On top of that, there's also a scheduled loss of use payout awards. That's basically when if someone has a workers' comp claim and the workers' comp has a notice of loss of decision, we are told that we have to award that employee X amount of dollars, so we have to pay that on top of whatever fees we have incurred. Then PERMA structure actually assumes all liability for the new claims that are incurred, and the plan is called a fixed dollar, fixed cost plan. It's a yearly annual premium, and it's all inclusive. The third-party administrator plan, which is the PMA plan, would continue for the tail claims of the claims that are open with PMA that will come over. And then they are focused on reducing claims. So the difference between the 2 plans, PMA has claims professionals, and when a loss claim is evaluated, a nurse is assigned to the case. They have risk management assessment. They have training, mix of in-person, virtual, self-paced, and also instructor-led. And then they also have safety loss preventative services, prevention services, which are web events that are training. PERMA, basically the same thing with the claims representative, that they have a nurse, everything's all inclusive. They have facilities risk assessment, which they have on-site visits to come to make sure that we are in compliance with federal and state rules. Their training programs are basically the same. They have online and in person. The one difference that PERMA has some additional enhanced, when they have safety committees, the safety committees will receive 8 hours of PERMA training and developing policies and procedures. Their strength is really on focusing to make sure accidents don't happen in the first place. The cost benefits of the fully insured plan is that this is a unique model, so it's an insured pool into which the members, so if we joined PERMA, the town would become an employer member, makes an annual contribution, and then we build equity. And that means that the member employers benefit collectively from the team's diligent efforts to reduce claims and costs. The caseloads, the cases, the analysts that work there carry a lower than industry caseload by design, which allows more detail to attention, finding issues, errors, and opportunities. There will also be process efficiencies, so certain administrative tasks are shifted from the town to the vendor. We'll have to do less billing after a certain amount of time. Reconciliations, they file our New York State workers' comp assessment filing, and then they have enhanced reporting for the OSHA that we need to do. And then expertise is because it was created by municipalities for municipalities in New York State. They have valuable knowledge of what it's working like, of working with limited resources of taxpayer dollars while still providing a 98% overall score with a superior ranking for claims handling. So it's beneficial to the employees still. They're not lacking the service when they have a workers' comp claim, and it's beneficial to the town as well. Okay, so the most important part, cost. So PMA, The way that we have it right now, the self-insured, is that there's an administrative flat fee per year. So their quote came in at year one, $30,990, year two, $31,920, year three, $32,880. And then, like I said before, you also have to pay a plus per transaction fee, and there's fees for everything, plus the schedule loss of use payouts that we have that come in. So when you run, every year we get from the workers' comp, it's called a loss run report. So when you look at a 10-year loss run report based on all the claims and all the SLU payouts, over the last 10 years, we have spent an annual average of over $900,000 on workers' comp claims and SLU payouts. So the downfall with that is there's always uncertainty each year of what the possible costs are going to be. So with PERMA, now it's fully insured, it's an annual premium. They give you, the starting year one would be $576,050, and then year two, year three, right now it's estimated at the same, but it is subject to change up and down yearly based on claims experience and your payroll costs. Again, it's a fully inclusive premium, so you pay that one price and then that's it. If it's like, say, last year, our claims were $1.2 million. There can be some years that, might be 477,000, but they vary. Each year is impossible to know, but like I said, over the 10 years, the average is about $900,000
That's per year?
per year. Yep.
And there's a flat fee of $576.
576. Then based on your experience, like I said, it could go up. It maxes out. So the worst case scenario, it could go to 633,000 for the year 2 and 3. If we go up, but our expectation is actually it should go down because they're very diligent in making sure that the claims are processed
appropriately.
Plus the safety, so the cost could go down, because
Yes. Yep.
Because the way we'll
big,
fall.
big on safety, yeah.
So what do we pay, do you know off the top of your head what we paid this year?
1.2 million was last year.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah.
So we paid 1.2 million, okay.
Where are we at this year so far?
This year, I think we're going to have a big payout also because we had some big SLUs already.
Yeah. And
Janelle, I just want to say thank you for taking this on. When I was supervisor, this goes back a long time ago, I remember starting to look at PERMA, okay? And because my term ended, it never got done. But it's been, workers' comp is a hidden cost to our taxpayers.
Yes, I can finish because I'm
Yeah.
almost done. We can go right. Wait, go back one, Diane, I'm sorry. Because I just need to finish because there's, so besides the 576,000, when the tail claims come over, it's still structured as the old way, the self-funded, because they have to take on the liability. But when those open claims will come over, they will also review to see if there's any kind of savings that they can find for us. So the first year will be $15,005. The second year is $13,950. Then year 3 down to $11,855 plus the transaction fees. And then there's a one-time data conversion fee for $8,500.
So, quick question, Janelle. Do you sign is this like a 5-year contract with them?
It's gonna be, it's a 3-year contract, and then we'll have 2 years to renew. And they also do offer other plans, so if we're finding that we say it's not beneficial to us, we could switch. But also, this is definitely a long-term plan, because in the first year, probably right away, we're not going to save money. Because when the claims come over, they're going to only take the new claims. I'm not going to have, if there's any SLU payments, it's going to be for the old stuff, so I'm still going to have to pay those out. But over the long term, we definitely should save money.
I just when I had the restaurant, the first year they get you on the first year here's $10, and the next year it's $110. The next year after that it's $10,010.
Yeah, but it's all based on your experience.
Yeah.
So
I get you.
as they work harder, because once it's fully inclusive, they're taking all the risk. So if they're taking the risk, they're going to fight harder because they don't want to pay it out.
That's right, and is PMA doing much in terms of safety?
No, not really. I mean,
They don't they don't
Yeah,
gain
no,
anything.
Yeah,
but-
they recommend, to us, when we have our reports with them, they'll tell us where, mainly it's like, say, slip and falls, you have this, and they offer trainings and, and Tracy, since she's been here, has done trainings with,
She's taking
know,
advantage
yes,
of a lot of
yeah.
trainings.
And PERMA has actually, from what they have told us, the trainings compared to what PMA has, far exceeds it, so, and it's all included. So we should have savings even there based on like the trainings that we're paying out right now.
I think you just have to explain to the taxpayers when they see $500,000, wow, that's like a big expense. And that would show up in our budget.
No,
where-
I'm gonna explain that
Oh,
right
how,
now.
how would
Here's the
that be paid for?
recommendations
Yeah,
right
if I
here.
can- yep. So it's the recommendation of the town controller to choose PERMA on the first dollar fixed cost coverage. Like I said, this solution is gonna be savings over the long term because the, risk is transferred over to PERMA. The savings will be dependent on the claims submitted and the scheduled loss of use payments awarded annually. Renewals are based on the loss experience incurred and payroll costs. So with better case management and developing best practices, the intended results will be to protect the members by decreasing claim frequency and costs. So it's important to note that savings will not be reflected in the operating budget. The workers' compensation fund is an internal service fund, which is funded by each fund, the general fund, highway, library, R&R, sewer, water, through their fund balance. So when we pay the claims, they're allocated to each fund based on who got hurt. So the better that we do, it will not be in the operating fund, but in their fund balance, they will not have to fund at the end of the year
Which is
the
great.
amount.
And they could use
Yeah.
that for something
So
else.
say the first year, say it was, that was 576, but all the claims really came in at 900, and we only paid 576. That's $300,000 less we need to fund, so it stays in their fund balance, and they can use it for capital projects.
So the library, 8 people got hurt there.
So you're still not gonna put the 500,000 allocated among the different funds, you're still not gonna put that in their operating budget, you're gonna keep it set.
It has to be, that's the way the accounting is done, is the workers' comp is a separate fund in the, it's called an internal, fund.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not part of your operating budget.
Pat, you were asking a question?
No.
I think it's a good
Yeah.
idea, thank you.
So
for
basically,
taking-
just the, kind of like I kind of said, so compared to the self-fund in years where the actual claims exceed the annual premium, then less fund balance will be needed to pay the premium. And in the years where the actual claims are less than the annual premium, then fund balance will need to make up the difference to pay for the premium. But over the long term, after we get the rest of the tail claims onto the new PERMA, and we start doing better trainings, and they do better, resources on being right on top of the claims for us, it's definitely gonna be a win-win for the town.
Do you have any estimate on the dollar amount on the tail claims that we're gonna still have to pay out?
Well, like, they have the flat fee, and it's declining, starting at 15,000, and it's only for the 3 years, and then you have to pay the per transaction fee. But once those tail claims come over to PERMA and they're managing it, they're more on top of it to make sure that the claims are what they really need to
Should be,
be.
yeah. It-
So roughly,
Not
it's
being overpaid.
it
roughly
need- it
between
needs more
last year,
oversight.
between last year and this year, if we go it this way, it's a $600,000 savings.
Yeah, no question.
It just might take a little.
It's gonna take time. You're
Take
not
time
gonna,
to realize
yeah,
it.
you're not
So-
gonna see that.
You got the tail.
Yeah, you're not gonna, have that.
Yeah, even like I have my workers' comp where I got injured breaking up a fight, and I had the operation. I came off their books per se, but I'm still doing medical. I still have to go for specific evaluations and medical. So there's still cost associated, but it
And
is carrying out.
we have claims that have been open for years that employees they still collect. Every 2 weeks, they get payments, so.
Great job.
Yeah,
Yes.
Oh, so it's, on the resolution tonight, if we can, pass it tonight, because we're under like a tight timeline, because the, policy needs to start 1/1.
Yep. And I just want to thank you because, it's budget season and your first one alone.
Yeah,
It's
no, not my first one.
second one alone? Okay, second,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I
all right,
did
so
the
your
last
second
year,
one.
Second one. I'm a pro now.
That's right. Well, you only had like a few months on the first one. and you're dealing with me, which is added stress and aggravation. The phone systems, all of the computer stuff that we've been redoing.
Yeah, that's on for the agenda tonight too, to go out for RFP for, for the IT services.
For the new IT services, yes. And now this, so just thank you. It's just, your office has been doing a great job. We appreciate it, and, I know it's all the leadership of David Wong sitting in the back. making sure-
David, take a bow.
We have a, I just want to give kudos to the whole finance team because we have a great team and
You do.
we all work really hard.
And
so
no, your leadership
nice
has
to be
been great.
recognized, so
Yeah.
thank you.
No,
Again-
thank you. And a special thank you to Sandy on getting
Yes,
her
oh
work
my
for the,
God, yes,
the communication
Yes.
systems.
definitely.
And I just want to repeat that thank you because back in 2011, PERMA sounded better.
Yeah,
And we
and the
just,
phone systems was around in 2012 too.
well,
also.
yeah, with that
Susan,
one,
stop,
it takes,
Susan, can you stop leaving me your messes to clean up?
it takes a while. It wasn't my mess. I discovered the mess, and unfortunately, the voters didn't give me a chance to fix it up at the time.
But we're getting it done, so thank
Finally,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to hit into resolutions, but first I want to read a
Oh,
proclamation.
there's one other item that, when do you want me to bring it up? After the resolutions? An item that's not on the agenda that I'd like to talk about. We do it after the resolutions?
You can do it after the resolution,
Okay.
so people could leave if they want
Okay.
to. We do have a proclamation. This 12th day of November, 2024, whereas the Albanian American population is currently 244,000. Since the early 20th century, the Albanian American community has made and continues to make significant contributions to the growth and prosperity of the United States. And whereas November is a significant month for the Albanian community, people of Albanian origin celebrate the Albanian Declaration of Independence, which declared Albania a sovereign nation on November 8, 1912. And whereas in November, Albania also commemorates Liberation Day, which is the day that Albania was liberated from Nazi Germany forces after the Albanian residence on November 29, 1944, Albanian resistance on November 29, 1944. And whereas November has been designated Albanian Heritage Month to celebrate the cultural heritage achievements and contributions Albanian heritage have made in Yorktown and across the country, now therefore be it resolved that I, Edward A. Lachman, along with the town board of the town of Yorktown, hereby proclaim November 2024 as Albanian Heritage Month in the town of Yorktown, and I urge all residents to celebrate and observe this month with appropriate ceremonies and activities.
Do we go to the Gramercy?
I was going to say, who wants to go for a drink at the Gramercy and drop this off?
They're my neighbors.
Yes, and
No, I don't know if I'll make it tonight. Tim is probably on his way out.
yeah, and unfortunately, Tim couldn't make it today, and his
JT's away?
JT's not around, and Christian, who also is part of the family that owns the Gramercy, is sick. Get well soon, Christian. I know you're watching, and
Luciana has your proclamation.
we'll get it dropped off. All right. So
Now, could you wait? Because I have a question about one of the resolutions. You know which one I'm talking about.
from the engineering department, authorize the comptroller to release erosion control bond to McKenna Custom Homes in the amount of $500. From the highway department, award a bid for the removal of stockpiled logs for the highway department. Bids were received and opened November 4th, with the bid amounts for the above referenced projects summarized below. Resolved upon recommendation of the Highway Superintendent Dave Paganelli, the bid for the removal of stockpiled logs bid for the town of Yorktown be and is hereby awarded to Alpine Tree Service, Inc. Authorize the comptroller to process a budget transfer for payment to Alpine Tree Service removal of stockpiled logs, and that is $25,000 coming from general fund, going to highway equipment rental. Authorize the comptroller to release the escrow deposit in the amount of $40,000 to JFR Real Estate Development, as the site work has been done on Croton Heights Road and Hanover Street. That's the street opening permit. Authorize the comptroller to release an escrow deposit in the amount of $500 to Christopher and Amanda Collier. From the Finance Department, authorize the comptroller to process a budget transfer for payment to Con Edison for rebills for the conversion of heating oil and natural gas. Authorize the comptroller to pay Luke Testa the cash value of unused time as of his date of termination. Authorize comptroller to pay cash value of unused time to Timothy Kolkman as of his date of resignation. From Refuse and Recycling, authorize the comptroller to process a budget transfer for payment to Westchester County for the solid waste incineration fees. From the Town Clerk, authorize the Town Clerk to advertise a request for proposals for IT services for the town of Yorktown. Set a public hearing to consider a proposed local law to amend Chapter 300 entitled Zoning regarding recycling facilities. Adam, would you like to speak on that real quick?
Sure. We're going to set a new public hearing date to consider the local law to cure a procedural defect that was spotted the first time we did it. So it's just a procedural,
Yep.
you know,
Very good. But
correction.
but we do have to do the public hearing over.
Yep.
Thanks,
So we'll
Adam.
do that. Thank you.
Can you hold on the next two,
And the next two.
the two water ones?
Okay, from the Legal Department, authorize the supervisor to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the Yorktown Central School District for shared services, facilities, and equipment. Authorize the supervisor to enter into renewal of the license and hold harmless agreement with the Yorktown Central School District for the Yorktown Central School District to use the commuter lot.
I make a motion, we approve all of those.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Couple to be read in real quick.
Wait, all right, you want to go back to the budget, to the ones I asked to hold?
No, I'll read these in and then we'll go
Susan,
back.
let him just continue on his path, and then we'll get to everything, okay?
Okay. We will authorize the supervisor to sign an agreement with PERMA as the Workers' Compensation Claims Administrator for a 3-year term. Whereas the town of Yorktown posted on September 24th, 2024, RFQ Toy WC 2024 to seek proposals, qualified workers' compensation administration firms. Excuse me. Actually, I don't need to read it since it's all here. So that's one. Can I have a motion on that?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then
Two.
from closed, we met with the chief regarding employment of a new officer. So be it resolved that Vincent Giordano is hereby appointed police officer in the town of Yorktown effective November 25th, 2024, to be paid $62,732 annually. Be it resolved contingent upon successful completion of a medical and psychological examination. Be it further resolved that the appointment is subject to a probationary period of no less than 12 nor more than 52 weeks, commencing on the first date of appointment on November 25th, 2024.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
Okay, yes. Welcome, Vincent. And then,
Susan wants
The
to go back to
two, the
water.
two on the water district that I asked you to hold, because I've been emailing Janelle on this, there seems to be some possible confusion about which water district IBM is in. Yorktown has two water districts, the main one, which is SW, and then a very small one down in Kitchewan. According to the tax records that I looked at, IBM is in the Kitchewan district, which should be SW2. But Janelle says that KVS, which is the town's accounting system, has it in SW. So I think this has to be clarified. If they're paying taxes to the Kitchewan district, then this money should come to the Kitchewan district.
Isn't there a Pines Bridge also? There's two, right?
I don't know, but
Kitchewan and Pines
I checked KVS since 2008, since KVS transferred our records from whatever system was prior to that. So I don't know however many years that is. It is budgeted and is paid out of SW
But could you check,
since 2008.
But that's what KVS says, but I'm saying the tax
Well,
record.
that's where it's budgeted and that's where it's paid from. If there's some issue with it, after 19 years later, we're gonna have to work that out at
Well,
another time.
I
Susan,
budgeted is one
do we
thing
know
where
where
the,
the money comes in and goes to from them, or not really? No, there's no definitive yet. Okay, but we still need to pay the bill.
We need to pay the bill.
but
that's where it's
SW,
that way for-
but SW2 Kitchewan is a separate taxing district. It's a separate taxing district.
And again, for right now, it's been paid since 2008 out of that account. It's been budgeted out of that account. I mean, you were supervisor for 2 years. If there was an issue, why didn't you notice it?
It never came
in
up. I don't know
2011,
how many
2012?
times
So we will have to figure it out, and if it's in the wrong place, then it's gonna need to be fixed. But right now, that needs to be
Well-
paid, and that's where it's
And
budgeted
this is
and
where
paid
the,
from.
this is where the budget is
That's where the
from?
budget is, and that's where it's
But
paid from.
this is just something that.
That's
Just
fine.
between the assessor's office and
I-
the tax office, you can check out tomorrow, and then we can do the resolution the next week and pay the bill the next week.
But it's, then it's a budget transfer. It's already budgeted here. So I don't,
If it's a mistake, we've made mistakes, and sometimes you find mistakes, and we have
But
to
what-
correct it.
I hear
I'm
that,
not.
But I think what we're saying is we may have a mistake in the allocation of the 12 numbers that are next to it, but the bill's the bill.
The bill's the bill, but who pays for it?
I
I'm not going to
understand
pay
that.
your mortgage bill, and
I
you're not
hear
going
you,
to pay
but
my
if you-
electric
but if-
bill.
I hear you. This is
if you
why
pay
we
my
need
mortgage,
good
I'll pay your
leadership.
electric.
Keep everything in a lane, but what you're saying is it's been in this lane since 2008.
Yes.
But it's a mistake that nobody caught.
I know, and I think we can
It's-
catch it and
if-
still pay the bills, what I'm
Right.
asking.
Whether or not it's a wrong taxing district, the same thing as all the sewer districts that are supposedly incorrect. So it'd be something that we'd have to go back and look at if it's wrong. So,
Well,
but for
if
right
it-
now,
We have a plan to do that so that we can make sure all the districts are correct, because it is odd that we pull money.
Yes,
It's
yes,
it's
we
gonna
are.
have to be looked at. This was something I got upstairs
I just
an
happened to.
hour
s-
before the meeting, so.
I just happened to see this when I just looked at it, and I looked where it was coming from. And because I know that when you look at your budget book, you'll see SW is water, and then like 2 more pages is
there's a-
SW2.
Right, but what she's saying is also she's noticing it even in different district that she's paying attention to. So obviously we need to do a deep dive on how everything is
It's
allocated.
just simple, and I looked at the tax
all right,
records,
all
and I said, I looked up
Okay,
IBM's
so-
address.
so
looked up
let
the-
me, no, Serge, I'm sorry. Let me
Just to clarify, there are two water districts down there. One is the Pines Bridge District, one is the Kitchewan District.
Pines Bridge pays taxes to who, though?
We do the same thing. We buy our water from Newcastle, which is
That's the
done
one,
through the water
Newcastle.
department.
It's the Newcastle
So both of
IBM.
those do that.
But they
down
both
there.
come from
They
Newcastle.
both come from Newcastle.
But why should a taxpayer in the SW district be paying a bill paying a bill for a different district is what I'm saying. So, all right, if you want to pay the bill, pay the bill.
Let me ask my question to Janelle. If we pay the bill, if we find out that it's in the wrong district, we could do a transfer.
Then do a transfer. That's all I'm saying. Is,
Or is it already been,
It's the
the
whole.
money been
it's-
collected into the district?
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to look at, I'm
Okay.
sure that Paul must know that,
Okay,
he's collecting X amount into SW, and that's where the bill's paid from.
sure. So tomorrow
'Cause
morning.
that's where the account is.
Let's,
Yeah,
let's,
that's-
let's get, because it's coming out of one or the other to get to where it needs to get. I understand what you're saying, Susan, it needs to be in the right district, but we could always
the
do.
right
it-
taxpayers.
We could always do an accounting, reconciliation to make sure that happens.
Which I think we stated already that Janelle
Yeah.
said she's gonna look into it.
Yes.
I think she stated it like 3 or 4 times already,
Yeah,
so.
she's just gonna
So-
look at all the
Janelle,
districts.
thank you for looking into it. All right, let's
Well, no,
let's move on. I mean-
I'm saying the sewer districts are already being
Oh,
looked
the
at.
sewer
That's-
districts,
Right, you're already
no.
on that, so now
Yeah,
we can
that's
add water
just-
to it.
Yeah, I know.
No,
So
sewer
let's
districts.
Check that now, too.
So-
That's a big mess.
Authorize,
I know, that's
20 years later. There we
okay,
go.
so let's move forward. People want to go
good?
home.
All right. There's one other issue I did want to bring up if we're finished.
Let me, can I get a vote on these?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Motion.
No, I gotta read because I haven't read the description. Authorize the control of the process of following budget transfer for Newcastle IBM water usage. And then, authorize the control of the process of following budget transfers for Newcastle IBM water usage. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Janelle, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
See you
All
bright
right,
and
I'll see
early
you
tomorrow.
The one issue I do want to bring up, which is not on the agenda, I had requested it to be on the agenda, but it is not. Back in 2022, Yorktown, the board voted to complete the replacement of the water meters with smart meters, and that's been going on very smoothly. The last time I spoke to Paul, the water superintendent, roughly 400 residents have refused to make appointments to have their meters replaced. He has tried. There have been multiple notices that have been sent. Okay. Earlier, the board had a discussion about what to do with these people who aren't paying their fair share of water bills. I would say 99% of the people are paying their fair share. Some, once they got the smart meter, have actually seen increases in their water bill, but they're paying for what they use, which is how it should be. The whole concept is of using the smart meters is that everyone pays their fair share. If 400 homeowners are not paying their fair share, I have a problem with that. And since they've been given multiple notices and have refused to respond, you can imagine, of course, why they're refusing to respond. Maybe they don't want their meters changed. The water department has said that they don't have phone numbers for these people. Their staff cannot go knocking on doors. That's just a very inefficient use of their time. They're busy dealing with the many water main breaks we have, plus other things. And I think the time has come, and the board discussed this several months ago, is putting a penalty on their water bill. That would shake them up, all right, when they, and I don't know what that amount would be. $50, $100, $200, that's to be determined. But I think that's the only way we're going to get these people to wake up and to pay their fair share the way everybody else is paying.
So first off, please refrain from the fair share, because I think that's a load of crap, because you don't know if their meters are slow or their meters are fast. They might be overpaying.
You're making quite a number of assumptions.
So please, let me finish. Eventually, they're going to have to, because as we do have a plan, as houses are sold, the meters have to get upgraded, and that's part of the sale of the house. I had explained to you that I was waiting, and I know it didn't pass this year. Pete Harcum had set something up, and it was regarding for-profit, and it was regarding like Con Ed, NYSEG, with their electric meters. They charge a minimal fee. I think it's like either $10 or $15 for people that have not replaced their meters with the electronic ones, unless there's a reason. There are some people who have sent in, I know at least one medical excuse based on equipment that's used in the house, and there's a concern, and they had a doctor write a note. But I have had the conversation with Paul, and I told him that our office will assist. I do not find it appropriate to wave a big stick and just club our taxpayers over the head. We need to do it regardless. These are going to get changed, but we should continue the outreach. Some people thought it was scams. Not that there are many scams out there nowadays. You get them every day. We've changed my mother-in-law's phone number. We stopped having mail delivered to our house, all because this stuff comes in the mail, and seniors don't know what to do. And, so sometimes they get scammed, sometimes they don't. The kids say, don't send any checks out, Ma. Don't send any checks out, Dad. So I understand your desire to get this all completed, and we would like that too. The thing is, I think we need to continue the outreach. We are down to 400, which is a very good number. We will keep moving down. We have the commercial meters that we're waiting on the parts to come in the testing, so we could get on that project as well. But if you have an elderly person who doesn't understand what it is and doesn't want to call because they're worried about a scam, I'm not going to say, you know what, pay us $50 every 3 times a year on every bill without knowing if that's an appropriate payment. But more important, if it's someone on a fixed income who's living on Social Security with the inflationary rate we're in, I think I'd rather be a little safer for them, be a little more considerate, and make sure that we work the process the way we do it. I'll go knock on doors if I need to. I do it anyway during the year.
You make several points. Let me respond to them. One, the state law that's pending that never got passed this past session is not relevant to this because it's a private water.
Not yet.
It's not relevant because it's a private for-profit corporation. Water is a special district. It's apples and oranges. That's number one. Number, you criticize me for the assumption that they're not paying their fair share, but you're making assumptions that they're elderly or they're on fixed incomes. You don't know. I don't know. Paul doesn't know. Nobody knows who these 400 people
Right.
are.
And I said if they are,
Okay,
which
so-
meaning
so
I'm
we
not
don't know.
assuming, but I will go
And-
knock on doors.
And then outreach. Does the supervisor have the time to go starting to knock on doors? Is that the best use of your time? Is that the
Probably
best use of
not,
your
but
time?
but is it unheard of for a supervisor to go around take a day and go around and talk to people in the town? I do it all the time. I do it in the stores, I do it in the markets, I do it in the houses. I go to the senior communities. I go to the senior the senior center, the nutrition center, because part of my job is talking to people, is finding out what's happening and trying to make sure that we hear the voices that are out there.
There's a big difference between talking to somebody at a senior meeting or at the supermarket and having a list and says, okay, I have to go to 1252 Main Street today, and you leave your office, okay, and you go knock on the door, and then they're not there, and then you go to
31 and 12.
31, whatever it is, and you're not there, and you're not working on solar laws, vaping laws,
How do you know he's not doing it on Saturday?
Pat, I was supervisor. I have some sense of the magnitude of the work that Ed has to do.
Sorry,
okay,
I don't.
I have.
Well,
It's an unbelievable job. It's an
know that.
unbelievable job.
It is, Susan, but I also have a team of people that'll work with me, and we need to really be there. I could even find people within the community, like if I had a bunch of people in Mohegan Lake, and I asked Ken, hey Ken, could you go talk to some of your neighbors and see if there's an issue with the water meters? I'm sure Ken might curse me under his breath, but I know these 4 people. Yeah, I'll give them a call. You know, so there you go, Dan. Thank you, Dan Strauss.
And
And
no.
you like to walk around town.
But we could do a letter, Susan. Look,
That list will be done in 2 weeks.
I just look. I understand what you're saying. I personally, and look, if the board wants to overrule me, that's fine. But I would personally like to exhaust all of our avenues before banging people over the head, especially into this.
That's what this board keeps on saying. And if I was one of the homeowners who just saw an increase in my water bill because I had a new meter, I would be very upset that my next door neighbor didn't let them in, and you don't know what they're doing.
We haven't had many people say that they've found a big increase or an increase at all. And we've had some people find their bills have gone down. So it's a law of averages too.
Look, you've brought it to Ed's attention.
Okay.
Ed has offered up. Hold on 1 second, please. Ed has offered up a way forward, which he feels is a little more gentle, and it's trying to get the job done. Let's see how far we get with that. That's it. You're arguing back and forth. You're saying your time, you're this. You're managing his time. You're managing his calendar. He's already said he's going to try to handle it this way. I'm willing to give him the opportunity.
What does
I
Chief
mean, that's
Nichols
it.
say?
I mean,
Could I suggest you put a
What's
time?
that?
Help us help you or
limit on it
something?
and say
So
you have
let me get the list from Paul. Let me map
Anyone's
it out and let me
watching,
see
please
what we
check your
can do.
neighbor's meters.
But yeah.
Put a time
But so-
limit. I
so-
give it 2 months. Give it 2 more months.
Well, I'm going to be away for a couple of weeks in December, so that won't happen.
Ed, I don't think
We'll
you
look
need to
at-
put a time limit on it. I think you
I
said
will.
how you want to handle
Yes,
it. I'm in support
and
of it.
as I said, and eventually I'm going to be knocking on doors for signatures and reelection and all that stuff. So you know what?
Sign here
If
and
I'm
check
will
our meters.
if I'm willing to do that, I damn well better be willing to just go knock on a door and have a conversation with our residents, and I don't care what party they're in. We need to always have open conversations, and I think people in the room here can vouch for that. That I'm a strong believer in that, And I don't personalize things. I definitely don't personalize people's political affiliations, or even if they like me or dislike me. I will listen, and I try to solve problems, and that's really what we're here for. And I appreciate your passion about this. And you know what, we pushed through to keep moving, because at one point, it wasn't going to move forward.
Yeah, it
So-
didn't move forward for many, 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 many years.
Yeah, well, but there was a point where it broke down, and we weren't ordering the meters, and we weren't doing that. But our board decided that yes, this is a good thing, and we're getting it done. So at least you know we're now off of the 550 and down to 400. So let's have the patience and get it done the right way. Yes, Adam.
I've got something I want to raise too.
Okay.
If we're ready to move on. I got a request today from the attorney for the 3000 Navajo Road application to expand the Lake Osceola
that-
overlay district boundaries.
Was that
I just wanna name that-
Blanchard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The request was, basically that they're ready to move forward to the next step if the board is inclined to set it down for a public hearing. I think it was last before us a couple months back. The matter was referred out. We received comments. So the next step would be to schedule for a public hearing. So the question.
We had a second referral that we had to send out, and according to John Pegger, they weren't ready yet, so I'd like to check on that first.
Okay.
And let me just add that I sent the board an email a while back saying that before we deal with this Navajo request, there are issues to be addressed to amend the Lake Osceola overlay law. There are problems with some of that law, specifically the FAR, calculating the FAR ratio that came up during the Soundview project, and that should be clarified before we expand the district for anything else.
Well, if we're opening up for a hearing to expand, we could open up to correct.
Yes.
So we could kill
Do
two
both.
birds with one stone, and not be
So you want to check
delaying.
in with John
And then who is
first?
going to do the expanded,
Going
who's,
up for effect that EAF is incorrect and it needs to be changed, so we're working on it.
and somebody has to do the expanded EAF, the 13-page thing that they sent.
Diana just said that.
So they're working.
And are we going to have an outside consultant do it like they did for the original EAF? This
No,
does-
this is just expanding the boundary. We're not talking
Well,
about
expanding-
analyzing the project or.
Expanding the boundary more than doubles the impact of the original EAF for the Lake Osceola district. Okay, it is major. You're dealing with 254 units when the original EAF was based on maybe 100 units.
Actually,
I
no,
don't believe
hold
so.
on, the original EF was over 300
That's
units.
correct.
And I don't think that's happening, which is one of the reasons
The
we,
question really is just whether you want to schedule the public hearing.
yeah.
I mean, that's.
And then we could get through all of
The
this.
public hearing then has to talk about amending the actual overlay law, and that has to be included. And then the board would, if they're
Yeah,
going to
but
schedule
again,
a public.
the question is, do you want to schedule the public hearing? That's the question. If the answer is yes, you can schedule it. If the answer is no, you don't have to schedule it. We can discuss.
We can't discuss having a public hearing on just extending the boundary, that if the public hearing has to include other amendments to the Lake Osceola overlay district law.
No, that's incorrect.
The law doesn't have to include amendments. You wanted to include
No,
amendments.
but
I'm
it
just
can,
saying
it
the
can
board
include,
wants-
Excuse me,
it
I'm
c-
speaking
it could
over you.
include both.
Right.
Which is what I just said before. So do we want to just delay all of this, or do we want to move forward?
We have to
I
see
wanna
what the
move
amendments
forward.
would be. If you
Let's move
want,
forward.
you might not agree with me that things have to be amended, but we need a
That's fine,
discussion
but-
about potential
but
amendments.
Okay, so let's put it.
You could pass a resolution that the clerk could schedule it whenever she gets the EAF from John, if you want to do that, right? Whenever it's ready. If you want
Right.
to move it forward. The applicant's asking for it
and
to-
then maybe we'll just put the. And I'm not convinced there are changes that are needed, but maybe we can put that on a work session. Can you and I sit down with that law over the next couple of days, Adam?
Yeah.
And rip it apart?
I think I've told you the problems with the FAR and the.
I know exactly what you're talking about. The issue was dealt with at the planning board. My colleague issued a memorandum. It was interpreted. We interpreted a way that made sense. We think that the code is. We can clarify. It's not a problem. It's easy, simple, no problem.
Would you share that memo with me?
Yeah.
the clarification, because there are like 3 different definitions of an FAR and how you calculate FAR, plus the fact that the FAR in the overlay law now does not include commercial space, and there's gonna be commercial space in the Navajo project. So what does the FAR calculate? That's not clear in the overlay law.
All right, well,
That's a basic
Adams,
issue.
please circulate Mr. Chen's,
Guys, I just want to name that Diana is not going to put this public hearing on until she speaks to John first.
that's fine.
So I just want to be very clear that if he's okay with it, we'll put it on for Tuesday. If he's not, then we'll come back and we'll have a discussion and put it on.
That's what I'm proposing. You authorize her to schedule it, assuming
When
she
she-
gets the EAF
Right.
from
I
John.
prefer to put it on Tuesday if John's okay with moving it forward.
Do you need a motion?
So
Is he gonna have the FEA,
I
the
don't-
expanded?
There's too many things in the application and the EAF that are not correct at this point in time, so they have to be corrected. So I prefer to have that first. You know, for us to refer it out a second time without accurate information is not a good thing to do.
Diana, are you clarifying the EAF or the expanded EAF?
I'm clarifying the entire document in my office.
It needs an expanded EAF.
That's
will take
that's an
that up with
opinion.
John.
That's your
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah.
Take it up with John, but
It
that's.
needs the,
Doesn't-
well, let's start with the corrected EAF.
Okay,
and
so
then if-
look, hold on a second. You're talking about, I'm not talking about a project. I'm just
is on
talking,
here?
I'm just talking about expansion.
You need
So-
a secret
so let's-
determination.
So,
You need a secret determination, and for that, you need something more than the 13-page EAF.
look, if we don't even want to expand it, I am not gonna tell someone to do $20,000-$30,000 worth of work. So we could get there with, look, they're still gonna need to do it for the project itself. All we need to decide on is it worth expanding that district? Why? The criteria and the EAF, not the expanded. I think that's more than adequate, and I think that's the route I would like to take. But since Diana wants to check back with the applicant and with our planning department, I think that's a good course of action, and then we could turn around
Put
and
it on Tuesday.
and look at next Tuesday. Yes.
I will say now for the record that the 13-page EAF checklist form is not going to be adequate to make a secret determination.
You've said that several times.
Okay.
And I think during the discussion, we've taken that into consideration and we have a path forward.
Yeah, so I will also seek the opinion of our planning attorney and our planning board.
You'll send me that FAR memo.
Need a motion to.
Yeah, do we, any other business that we want to bring up? Adam, Susan, Patrick, Sergio, Luciana, Diana? No. So can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, Yorktown.
I do everything.
Good night, Yorktown.
That's the